Hi there, my name is Dan Scott and I'm an Adobe certified instructor here at Envato Tuts Plus. And together, me and you are going to learn everything you need to know to get started with Adobe Photoshop. Now this course is for absolute beginners. There is no need to have any previous Photoshop knowledge or any photography or design knowledge for that matter. Okay, we're going to start right at the beginning and work our way through step by step. Now, we're not going to go through every single tool and every one of its features. What we're going to do is we're going to work through real-world practical examples in Photoshop. Then we'll learn the tools and features necessary to make it an amazing image. We'll start by getting the most out of our photographs, correcting the light and the color, also how to change the colors completely in Photoshop. We'll spend some time with text, showing you how to distort it along with all of its effects. I'll share some amazing cropping and resizing tricks, as well as exciting ways to transform and distort images so we can fake mockups like this. I'll show you all my special retouching tricks, cleaning up small imperfections, as well as removing larger parts from images. Before the end of this course, you'll be able to make simple masks like this, but you'll also have the skills for super tricky masks like this out of focus here. There's lots more as well, like mastering layers, knowing the best practices for exporting images and sharing them. It's just a really good foundation for getting started with Photoshop. I set some exercises through the course so that you can practice the skills while you're learning. So if you've never opened up Photoshop or you've opened it and you've struggled with it, follow me and I will show you the best ways to make beautiful images in Adobe Photoshop. Alright, it is time to get started. Now, the first thing you can do is you can download the source files. The source files are just the files that we use throughout the course, so you can download those and play along. You can also, there are projects that get set during the course, okay? Not homework, there are super exciting things to do together. Okay, but if you want to share those with us, okay, there is a forum post to use, so go to the forums and search for Adobe Photoshop for beginners. Also, you can share on social media. Twitter, we are Tuts Plus Design, or Dan Loves Adobe, okay, or on Instagram, it's Bring Your Own Laptop. Okay, so share what you get up to. Next thing we need to do is we need to reset our workspace. We'll jump into the computer now, and yeah, we'll do that now. All right, so first thing we need to do is let's just get our screens all looking the same so you can follow along easily. So first, just go up to Window, down here to Workspaces, and it doesn't really matter what yours is set to. Let's change it to Essentials. Okay, so what we're also going to do is we're going to reset Essentials. So back up to Window, Workspaces, and just click this one that says Reset Essentials. And that's just going to get yours looking like mine, so yeah, it's a little easier to follow along. All right, so boring stuff over, exciting stuff next video. Let's start looking at layers in Photoshop. Hi there, in this video we're going to look at layers. We're going to do some adjustments to this image, all on different layers so we can see the different effects and really just get to understanding how layers work. All right, let's get started in this video. Okay, so first thing to do is let's go up to File and let's go to Open. Now, from the files that you've downloaded, okay, open up O1 Layers. Okay, this image comes to us free from Milos Tronczynski. I practiced that. Let's open them up. Thanks, Milos. So the first thing we need to do is make sure you can see a layers panel. Mine's over here. If you can't see it, go to Window and just make sure the tick is on layers. What we might do is see this libraries panel here. We're going to look at him later in the course, but he takes up quite a lot of screen real estate. Now, my screen's quite big. Yours is probably not. When I'm working on my laptop, see these little double chevrons? I always go through and just close this down, okay, just to give yourself a little bit more room. Okay, so down here in my layers panel, I've got one layer. By default, when you're opening up a JPEG, you'll get given the word background and it'll be locked, okay? What we want to do is right click the background, okay, and go to this one that says duplicate layer. We're going to give it a name. We're going to call ours Auto Tone, okay, and that's the first of the automatic features. We're going to click OK. Now it hasn't changed anything. I've just got two layers sitting on top of each other. Okay, I've got auto tone and auto background. Now with the auto tone layer selected, okay, it's kind of this light gray, or in earlier versions of Photoshop, it's kind of a blue color. So with it selected, let's go up to Image and let's go to Auto Tone. You ready? Stand back and pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool little automatic feature. Now what auto tone's doing is it's looking at the highlights, midtones, and shadows and trying to find kind of a better than the original we had. Okay, so it goes and does that for us. A nice little quick automatic feature. When do I use that? I use that quite a lot when I'm doing maybe images that they're not going to be like the front cover of a magazine or the hero image for a design. It's just, I want a quick fix. Okay, I've taken them on my phone or something and they're not quite perfect. I'm going to go through and use something like auto tone before I say upload them to social media. So over here in my layers panel, the thing to look at is auto tone. Okay, it's a little hard to see. The thumbnails are slightly different. What we can do is turn the eyeball off on this auto tone layer. Just click the eye right in the middle. Okay, and now we can see the layer underneath, which is the background. So the background's still there, he's protected, he's not being wrecked, okay? And I can turn this top one on and off easily to compare the two. Now, when you're working with layers, you're always looking from the top down. So imagine you're always a bird flying above and you can see auto tone, and I could turn the eye on and off for background, but nothing happens, okay? It's because auto tone's covering it. Okay, so I could turn you off and then you off. Okay, so that's, I guess what we're doing in this video is getting an understanding of layers. Let's do the next of the automatic features. So let's turn off the eyeball. Okay, so I've turned off auto tone. Let's select the background layer and right click it again and go to duplicate layer. Let's look at the other feature. Okay, it's called auto contrast and let's click OK. Then with that layer selected, it should be automatically. Let's go to image and let's go one of the other options. Okay, it's better. Okay, the colors are a bit strange still. So note that we've used auto contrast and it's given us a result. Now let's compare it to auto tone by turning on this auto tone layer, on, off, on, off. Sometimes it can be a little hard in this course to see the differences depending on the video quality that you're kind of receiving. So I can see a really clear difference between, I like auto tone better, like stronger darks. Now don't think auto contrast is just broken or doesn't work. Okay, what you'll find is it depends on the image. Sometimes I open up stuff and auto tone does a horrible job, auto contrast does a great job. So open up your image and basically test all three of these. Okay, figure out which is the best, and then say you've got another 10 images to do, then as long as they're kind of photographed in a similar sort of situation, you can often not have to try all three. Just go to the one that works. So we've got auto tone, which is nice, my favorite, auto contrast and background. So let's turn the two eyes off on this top one. Let's look at the last of those automatic features. Right click background. Let's go to duplicate layer, call it auto tone. Nope, we're using auto color, and let's click OK. Let's go up to image and let's just set this one. Pretty good. Okay, it's pretty close to auto tone. Now, if I turn them all on, what I want to do is, I know auto contrast is not that great. So I'm gonna turn it off. And what happens is, if I have this off, remember you're the bird flying on top. If I wanna compare auto tone with color, okay, I can turn auto tone at the top. And as long as auto contrast is off, if I turn this eyeball off, you'd imagine you're seeing auto color. Turn it back on. You can kind of see I'm toggling between these two here, okay, to see the difference. You have to experiment a little bit and play around, okay? If it makes it a little easier, sometimes like this guy here, you can just select on him and click on the trash can, okay, if he's wrong, okay, keeps the layers a little bit tidier. You can also drag them. Let's say that we want auto contrast on the bottom. So we want it underneath auto color, not underneath background. Okay, he's at the back. So click, hold, and drag auto contrast, and you'll see that, can you see this little blue line appears? Okay, that little blue line, it's a little hard to see, that's where he's gonna go. Okay, I would like you to play around. I'm gonna set you a little task. I would like you to have I want them alpha numeric order. So auto, oh my, ABCs. Auto colors at the top, then auto contrast, and then auto tone at the bottom. Okay, just to practice dragging them. That's all I want you to do really. And you'll notice that the difference between say auto color and auto contrast on the video, it might be so minutely different, just a slight color change. And then it's up to personal preference. Do you like auto color better or auto tone better? Now you could go through, open up a bunch of images and just run that one automatic feature. All right, so that's a basic introduction to layers, and we looked at some of the cool little automatic features in Photoshop. Now we're gonna use layers all throughout this course, so if you're finding like, man, heck, that was confusing with layers, don't worry, we're gonna kind of work through them every video looking at layers and you'll get a bit more comfortable with them. One of the things we'll have to do before we go though is save this document. Now we opened it up. Remember, it was a JPEG when we opened it. Now if I go to File, Save, okay, it's going to say you can't be a JPEG. Why is that? JPEG can't have more than one layer. JPEG just have the background layer and that's it. If you had not created these other layers, it would have just saved over the top of the original. Okay, but Photoshop says, hey, you can't be a JPEG, so you're going to have to be this Photoshop file. It's a PSD, there he is there. Okay, and I'm happy for you to save it straight back into the source files using the same name. The only thing different will be the PSD. Don't change any of the settings, okay, and just click Save. This little Photoshop format options opens up every single time. Don't worry about this, okay? It just means that Photoshop's asking, if I save this as a PSD, do you want me to save it as a maximum compatibility version? And all that means is that it's more likely to open in really old versions of Photoshop. Okay, so I always leave this on. It makes the file size slightly bigger, but just leave it on and click on Don't Show Again because it's not something that needs to pop up every time. I'm going to leave mine on because I'm an instructor and I need to explain this thing. It's a pain, but hey ho, let's leave it on there. Let's click OK. Cool. So let's finish this off by going to File and Close. And before you go, let's practice that. So let's go to File and go to Open. And I want you to, on your own, open up the O2 layers, the Tavern Dodson. Thank you very much for the image. Let's click Open. And I'd like to set you a task. I want you to go through, duplicate the background layer. You'll end up with 4 layers in total. Okay, and I want you to practice with these 3 different automatic features. Then I want you to reorder them to the one at the top that you feel is the best. Remember, it's not always 100% perfect. Okay, it's a bit of personal judgment, but drag the one that you think is the best to the top of the layers group, okay, and stack them up. Just a bit of practice. All right, I'll see you in the next video where we are going to look at a little bit more of Photoshop kind of foundations, where we show you how to work with multiple images, kind of copy and paste from one to the other and how that works. All right, I will see you in the next video. Hello friends, in this video we're going to look at kind of basic navigation of Photoshop. Okay, we learned a little bit in the last videos with layers, but now we're going to start moving things around and resizing them. Okay, so we're going to combine 1, 2, 3 images and put them all together on this one in these nice little cubes. Okay, so a few little shortcuts, promise not too many, but just the things that get used quite a lot. It's best to use the teeny tiny shortcuts. I promise not to overwhelm you much. All right, let's get started now. All right, so to learn our kind of workflow features, we need to open up all of those images that we want to combine. So we're going to go to File and we're going to go to Open. And we're going to be using these from Jessica Nolden. Okay, thank you very much, Jessica. And it's the O3. Okay, there's an A, B, C, and D. Now you can click one and just click Open and open them all individually if you find that more useful. A little trick though is select the first one, hold Shift, click the last one, okay, and they should all be selected, and click Open. Now, what's happening is you can see along the top here, I've got these tabs. So all the images are open in tabs. If for some reason yours doesn't, okay, that's the default. But if it doesn't, go to Window, Arrange, and just click Consolidate on all tabs. Now there's probably about 3 or 4 ways of combining images. Now I'm just going to show you the one that's the most bulletproof and reasonably easy. So we want to, this first image here, this is where we want to get those little squares. So this first one here, the way to kind of drag it to this tab here is literally kind of dragging it. So we're going to grab the Move tool, which is the first one in our little toolbar here. And you click and hold with your left mouse arrow, okay, click and hold the center of this image and drag it to this other tab. It's a bit weird. Okay, so click, hold, drag. The mouse is down the whole time, and I just hover above this tab and Photoshop automatically switches to this one. I've still got the mouse down the whole time, and then I move my mouse key down here and let go. Okay, so the big thing for that, it does feel a bit weird. Okay, I'm going to drag it into place. Now, you have the mouse down the whole time. Okay, if that went horribly wrong or didn't work at all, okay, I'm going to go to Edit and I'm going to go to Step Backwards. That just kind of undoes. I'm going to keep going step backwards until it's gone. Okay, and I'm going to practice again with you guys. So back to this tab, Move tool, click, hold, drag in the center. I'm just holding down my mouse key, holding it down, holding it down, holding it down. Okay, you do get used to it after a while. It's a strange one. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll do the same for this O3C. Okay, so click, hold, drag the center of it, and then move it in here. Okay, I'm going to try and line them up nicely. Okay, you'll notice that Photoshop's pretty clever and tries to kind of automatically align things. Okay, if yours doesn't align, go to View and come down and just make sure Show and the Smart Guides is on. It's probably on by default, but I'm just in case it's not. Okay, so View, Show, Smart Guides. Great, so that works for all images, and it's going to be quite protective when we look at things later on called layer masks and adjustment layers. That dragging option is the best way to do it, in my opinion. Okay, the last one is going to throw us a little bit. This one has a different size, so the same technique works, right? So I click, hold, drag it to my first tab, let go, but it's ginormous. Okay, so this is going to happen to you, where sometimes the images can be really, really big, like it can go 2 kilometers that way, okay? So you need to kind of get them down to a proportionate size. So this is going to be our kind of next bit of navigation. Now, we're going to be learning zooming in and out first. Okay, so for this to work, I need to zoom out a little bit. So there is a magnifying glass over here, okay, which you can click once to zoom in, and over here you can click it to minus, and now this thing, when you click once, will zoom out. So you just toggle between these two here. Now, you can definitely do it that way, but what you'll find is that it's such a common thing you do in Photoshop. Everybody learns the shortcut quite early. Now, if you hold down the Command key on a Mac, or the Control key on a PC, and just tap the plus button on your keyboard. Okay, just up on the top of your keyboard there. Plus to zoom in, minus to zoom out. Okay, we're not going to go through too many shortcuts here, but there's just a couple that you really need to know early on. What I'd like you to do is zoom out to kind of this level, doesn't really matter, just so you can see the edges, because what we'd like to do is shrink this guy down. Okay, so I've got that layer selected. I'm going to go to Image, nope, I'm going to go to Edit. I'm going to go to Transform, and we're going to use Scale. So Scale is one you use quite often. We're going to cover all of these in a later tutorial, but for kind of fundamental navigation, you're going to need to move things and scale it. Okay, so we'll just cover this quickly now. So Edit, Transform, Scale. You'll see that's why we zoomed out, so we can see the edges of these boxes. Okay, so what you can do is if you grab the edge, you drag it around, you can rescale it down. The only trouble doing it this way is that you can see it kind of distorts the image. So I'm going to go to Edit, Undo. And what I want to do is I'm going to hold down a shortcut. Okay, so I'm going to hold down the Shift key. We won't do too many shortcuts, I promise. Okay, but hold down the Shift key and grab any of the corners before you start dragging. Okay, and that just means it will scale the height and width, kind of a fundamental Photoshop thing. Okay, so once you get it to a size you kind of like, okay, sometimes if you're new, you're sitting here like me, looking at your hands and going, do I let go of the Shift first or the mouse key first? Okay, it's always the mouse. Okay, anytime you're thinking that, it's always the mouse. Let go of the mouse first. Okay, and then you can let go of the Shift key. And I'm going to drag mine in kind of close, and you see it kind of lined up nicely. And what I might do now is just drag it so it's the perfect width to match these other guys. Now, zooming in a little bit, who remembers the shortcut? You all do, okay? So on a Mac, it's Command plus. If you're on a PC, it's Control plus. Okay, zoom into a nice kind of size. And this brings us on to our next kind of fundamental navigation feature that we need to learn in Photoshop. Okay, and it's just moving around this canvas. So you can see I can't see the bottom here. Now the long painful way is grab any of these sliders and drag it down. And that is fine when you're really new. Okay, and I threw a lot of shortcuts into this tutorial, just one more. Okay, hold down the spacebar key. See my little arrow here? The spacebar key transforms into the little hand. Okay, so spacebar key and just kind of click, hold, and drag your mouse. So spacebar down, click, hold, drag around. Okay, or use these little slidey handles. They are totally fine. All right, and what I'd like to do is just resize it a little bit more so it matches these sizes. So what's the key I hold down to make sure the height and width is the same? You remember, it's the Shift key. So holding Shift, drag it up and just get it kind of close. We're not looking for perfection right at this moment. We'll cover a little bit more later on. Okay, get it close. Now, when you're finished, you need to kind of say, Photoshop, I am done. To get rid of these like little marks around the outside, because you'll find that some of, you see my menus just don't work now. Okay, because it's saying, I'm halfway through this thing, please. Dan, finish it off by hitting Return on your keyboard or the Enter key. Okay, and that just kind of gets it to where I need. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, which is, you remember, Command minus or Control minus. Okay, and what I'm going to do is with my Move tool, okay, and now depending on if you've turned yours on or off, make sure Auto Select's on. Okay, and I can click and drag this one up here. I'm going to drag this one here and this one here. Ah, beautiful. All right, my friends, that is going to be it. So just to recap, to move things from one image to another, or at least one tab from another, use your move tool. Click, hold, drag it up to the tab, hold the mouse key down the whole time and let go of it. Now, if you end up with problems with it being the wrong size, you go to Edit, go to Transform and use Scale. And if you want to lock the height and the width together, what do? That's right, Shift key, hold that down, okay? And the other two things we learned were some shortcuts, okay? Zooming in, which is Command plus or minus on a Mac, or Control plus or minus on a PC. And once you're in really close, okay, you can drag around with these guys or hold down the spacebar key to move around. Click, hold, and drag your mouse. All right, friends, let's get on to the next video where we start looking at something called levels, probably the thing I use the most in Adobe Photoshop. All right, let's go there now. Hi there, in this video we're going to look at something called levels. Basically they get the shadows and the highlights and the midtones all to look really nice. Okay, let's take this image here. Okay, looks great, but then we add levels and looks more amazing. All right, it's the foundation, it's the thing that I do most in Photoshop when opening up a new photograph. Let's go learn how to do that now in Photoshop. All right, so first up, let's go to File and go to Open. And in your source files, open up O4A, okay, this one here. It is a photograph by Errol Ahmed, okay, and let's click Open. All right, so let's look at opening the levels. Now, there's a couple of ways of opening it in Photoshop, and if you've done Photoshop a long time ago, you might have used this method here. Let's not use these. These here are very destructive, so we're going to use the non-destructive methods, okay, which is basically this adjustments panel here. If you can't find it, let's go to Window and just open up Adjustments. And you've got to hover above them. After a while, you work out what these little icons do. But can you see here, I've hovered above it with my mouse and you can see, whoop, there is where levels is written. Okay, so I'm going to click on this one here. This is definitely for me as a amateur photographer, but professional designer. I use this one the most when I'm fixing up my images because I need a lot of work with my imagery. Now, this complicated looking thing opens up. It's called the histogram. It's not complicated. Well, it's not very hard to use, which is nice. Basically what we're looking at is information from images. This is all see this little dark house here and the white house? This is everything that is really dark in the shadows, and this is everything that's really bright like lights. Okay, and you can see here it's missing a little bit of information there and a little bit there. Now what you do with levels is you basically just drag this black slider up into the first little mountain here. Okay, so click, hold, and drag it. And you notice over here in my image, if I click, hold, and drag, as I drag it, okay, and I get closer to this kind of peak here, the blacks become a lot stronger. If I go too far past this like first rise, watch this, it starts kind of like getting kind of weird. Okay, so there is not a perfect adjustment, but you just drag it here, basically the beginning of the first hill. Okay, the same on the other side. So there are whites in here, but they're not super strong. To make them nice and strong, all we do is grab this white little kind of house thing here, drag it to the left, and do I want to drag it all the way in here? No, because it starts, I start overexposing some of these whites and they start blurring together. So it's kind of the beginning of the first little hill. There it is there. Okay, so often just dragging those two in, tucking the two ends in will get you your strong whites and your strong blacks. Now the middle slider here, the gray slider, is all your midtones. Now this will depend on the image. Basically every image that I open up, I often tuck in the ends, okay, and they both come in. Now where does this middle slider go depends on the image. If I drag it all the way to the right, darkens it down, all the way to the left, it lines it up. And this will really depend on your image and what look you're looking for. Okay, so I'm just dragging mine back and forth and I'm looking at my image, not my slider over here. Okay, looking at the image and just finding where I feel it's nice. Now, I didn't need to move it much at all. And that is correcting an image kind of 101. I do this, the first thing I do before I do anything else in Photoshop is just get the levels right. Now to check whether you've made this thing better or worse than when you opened it, you can see here, this is called an adjustment layer. So these are the levels. You can see it's appeared in my layers panel. The cool thing about that is that I can turn it on and off. Okay, like we did earlier on when we did our automatic features, you can turn this on and off. Okay, so turn the layer off, I can see the background underneath, and that's what it started like. And it looks fine when we open it. It's not until we do the levels that you're like, okay, man, there was a bit more in that image I could have got. Okay, so yeah, that is levels. What I'd like you to do now is save this image. Okay, it's going to ask you to call it a PSD, and that is great, Photoshop document. And I'd like you to open up the second example. Okay, and I'd like you to practice on your own. So it's O4B, okay, and open up this one here, and yeah, practice the same thing. Create adjustments layer, okay, under levels, and yeah, see how you go. Tuck in the two ends and then decide where that middle slider goes. And this will be a cool time to share what you've done and kind of what, what your end result would be. So check us out on social media, and that's at Tuts Plus Design. I'm Daniel Loves Adobe, and on Instagram, I am Bring Your Own Laptop. So take a screenshot, save a JPEG. I'd love to see what your end result with that second example is. All right, so let's get on to the next video where we look at vibrance, okay, getting and extracting amazing color from your images. All right, let's go and do that now. Hi there, in this video we're going to look at vibrance, and we're going to do this before and ready after. Okay, I've gone a little overboard to exaggerate the effect for the intro, okay, but let's back it off a little bit and let's look at kind of some real world use in this video. All right, let's get started. All right, first up, let's go to File, Open. And if you did the previous tutorial and you did the homework that I set, which was this one here, 04B, have that one open because we're going to use that one. If you didn't and you skipped ahead, you can open up 05A, and I've done the homework for you. Let's click open. Basically, this is the image we want open. You might have done the levels yourself. You might skip to this one here where I've done them for you. So levels is the first thing that I do. The next thing is vibrance. Okay, so with the layer selected, let's go to our adjustments panel, and it's this kind of like V here. Okay, it's the last one on the top right. Click on vibrance. Now vibrance, if you are like maybe old school Photoshop and you're kind of getting back into it, saturation was the only option before. And saturation and vibrance are, I guess, interesting things to compare. So vibrance is the best one to use in my opinion. Okay, watch this. If I crank the vibrance up, things just get more amazing. Okay, or the big difference is that you can see some of these images or some of these colors here at the front here, especially these pinks and these yellows, they're actually quite strong already. What vibrance does is when it lifts them up, it starts lifting up other colors, supporting colors in the background, whilst leaving these. They go up a little bit, but not as much as some of these background colors. So let's look at this green here. Okay, if I lower that back down to about 0, it's kind of washed out. And instead of increasing them all equally, it leaves some of these more saturated ones or alone. Okay, and brings up some of the other ones to meet it. The difference between that and say saturation, watch this, if I crank up saturation, to get this kind of green to come out, these guys end up going a little bit overboard. Okay, you might like that effect. Okay, there's no kind of like right or wrong. It's more, this was probably going to give you the more natural effect. So increasing the vibrance. How far do you go? You can max it out. Okay, that's totally fine. Often, depending on the quality of the initial photograph, it's only kind of slight adjustments just to kind of lift the colors. Plus 40 in this image works for me. Down the bottom here, remember the eyeball, on and off this vibrance layer just to see if I made this better or worse. You can see it's just lifting, say, these blues back here and these greens here just to make a more colorful image or more vibrant image. I might go up even a little higher. You can do both. Okay, bit of saturation and a bit of vibrance. Not normally what I do. Cool. So that is vibrance, and that's kind of like, I guess, lifting the colors, leaving some of the saturated ones alone. What I'd like you to do is save this document, close it. Okay, it'll save as a PSD, and I want you to open up the second version. Okay, this one here is Justina Poon. Okay, open up her image. Okay, and I'd like you to do the same thing. Go to adjustments panel, go to this little kind of V, and see this one here. Oh, I want to do it with you. Okay, I said it for homework, but I'm doing it with you. Why? Because this one's a really clear example of that's already really saturated, but say this, I'd say rooster, chicken, okay, is not. So watch this when it comes up, okay? Vibrance lifts the color of this chicken here, but leaves this fine. Whereas saturation, okay, ends up blowing this out to get this color going. So have a practice with this, even though I just did it with you, and save it. I'd like to see your final result. Okay, so check us all out on social media. Twitter is Tuts Plus Design, and on Twitter I'm Dan Loves Adobe. Or if your favorite is Instagram, I am Bring Your Own Laptop. I'd love to see what you did. All right, let's get into the next video where we start looking at adjusting kind of specific hues. At the moment we just made everything a bit better. Okay, let's say we have a color shift and there's a little bit too much color. We can start doing some more selective adjustments. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Hi there, in this image we are going to look at hues, which is basically just colors in Photoshop, and we are going to look at doing kind of selective colors there where we leave the stalk alone but we can adjust colors. Okay, cool stuff like that, and also more kind of like practical stuff where say this image here, the colors are great but we just want to make them lift them up a little bit. Can you see before after, before, after. Okay, just to kind of like subtle adjustments, more of the day-to-day use of Photoshop's hue adjustments. All right, let's go and learn that now in Photoshop. All right, let's look at the first step. Let's go to File, let's go to Open, and in your source files, open up 06A, the first one. Okay, thank you TJ. Let's go to Open, make sure we're on our Move tool, and we are going to go back to our Adjustments panel. Okay, so we looked at levels earlier, and then we looked at vibrance. Now we're going to look at the kind of next step, and we're going to look at this one called Hue and Saturation. Click on him, he's the first of the second line. And to start off with, I want you to grab just this main hue slider here, grab the little diamond in the middle with the triangle, and drag all slowly to the left. Ooh. And then slowly to the right. Cool, huh? Okay, it's just a way of going through and deciding and changing the hue of an image, okay, completely. Now this works perfectly for this particular one because there's only one color in the image. Let's close this now and jump into an image that has multiple colors. I'm gonna have to use a couple little tricks to adjust that. So let's save and close this one and open up the next file. I'm not going to save mine just because. I've done that before. Let's go to File, Open, and let's open up 06B. Okay, and this one here by Felipe. If I pronounce people's names wrong, I'm sorry, I try. Let's look at with this layer selected. Let's go to Adjustments and let's open up Hue and Saturation. Now, if I grab this hue slider now and I want to change this to say pink, if I change it to pink, where's pink? Okay, you notice it's changing the stalk as well. So just by dragging the slider up the top by itself, it just changes everything. It's quite cool, kind of hip, acidy dream type. But let's say that I want to kind of isolate this particular color. Okay, so where is his master? Drop that down. And let's go down to reds. Okay, and now it's going to only adjust the red color. Cool, huh? Okay, so that's a way of, adjusting a specific color. You might have a product that you've got a photograph of or some clothing. And the cool thing about it is that it's quite a unique color within the image. If there's multiple things that are red in this image, this is not going to work. But we'll look at something called masking later on to fix that. But for the moment, okay, because we've only got one red thing, it's a nice, quick, easy way to adjust the hue. Now, not just adjusting the hue, we can go through and adjust the saturation of that color as well for that one particular color. Okay, the other thing is, let's say that you want to change the color of the stalk. Now, what happens, especially in kind of like landscape and kind of nature shots, is you're like, okay, I want to adjust that color, which is green, clearly, because it's the stalk of a rose. But if you look real closely, it's actually, if I zoom right in, it's actually a bunch of kind of ochres and yellows that make up that. Kind of my brain tells me that it is green because that's what green stalk should be. So if I go to say greens and say I want to adjust you, not a lot happens, you can see. Okay, it's because actually this guy is made up of mainly yellows. So that happens quite a bit. You're thinking maybe this thing's broken. It's not. It's just like the yellows are just not, the greens aren't very green. They're more of a yellow color. So now I've got yellows and adjusting them. You can see I can adjust it. And often what I'll end up doing is adjusting the greens to look more like the kind of green. You can see I've just dragged it a little bit to the right and it's kind of made it green. I'm going to drag up the saturation, okay, just as an exaggeration to show you that, it's actually the yellows. Now the lightness slider here, I never use. It does a pretty weird thing. It just kind of like covers we're looking at this down here, covers it all in white or removes it all black. Okay, so I never use that slider. If you want to play with the lights and darknesses, okay, go back to the levels like we did earlier in the tutorial. Remember that's under adjustments and here under levels. Okay, so you might not be doing this particular exercise very much where you kind of want to replace a color. Let's look at kind of more thing that I end up running into a lot more. So let's save and close this one. I'm not saving it. And let's go to File, Open. And in here, we're going to open John Mark Arnold, okay, his 06C. Let's open up that one. Okay, so this is kind of typically what I end up doing. I don't end up changing like the whole rose, like changing a completely different color. I don't get to do that very often. Most of my work is I got an image from a photographer, I'm using it for a project, and I just want to make the greens a little greener and the sky a little bluer. So to do that, it's the exact same technique as we did for the previous one, but we're going to be a little bit more subtle with it. So Adjustments panel, let's go to Hue and Saturation. And what I want to do is adjust this grass here. Now, like in the last one, grass in this case is actually more yellow than it is green. If I grab the greens and try to adjust the colors, nothing much is changing. So if I go to yellows though and adjust them, Okay, you can see there's a lot more yellows going on in that grass. And what I want to do is, instead of making them purple, which you could do, okay, I'm just going to make them a bit more green. Okay, so I'm dragging a little bit to the right. Now, on, off, you can see, yeah, a bit more green. And what I also might do is grab the saturation, just drag it up a tiny bit. Now, it's those kind of like tiny adjustments. These are the hard ones because you're like, it's like, sometimes you're like, you want to just make it scream like you've fixed it in Photoshop, but often it's just more kind of like subtle changes than it is, you know, that's the kind of, I guess, the nice adjustments are just tiny little corrections. Same with the sky. The sky is actually made up of a mixture of blues and cyans often. So you have to kind of pick the blues, check that they're in there by dragging the saturation up. You can see that they're definitely there. So what I want to do is probably just bump them up a little bit. Okay, on, off, just a little bit more maybe. And in here, you might go to the cyans and I crank up the saturation, definitely in there as well. So there's a mixture of both of those colors. And you can decide whether you want to kind of adjust them and make them maybe a little bit more blue or, yeah, there you go. Just a little bit of touch that way. And I'm going to crank up the saturation a little bit. Okay, so on, off, on, off. It might be a little bit hard to see in the video, but hopefully if you're playing along on your monitor, you'll be able to see it quite clearly. Yeah, it's these kind of like tiny adjustments are the things that I spend most of my time doing, just little fixes. One thing before we go is this one here says colorize. If I click on colorize, it kind of removes all the colors and gives you an option for the slider here to do like a sepia or just kind of a, you know, single tone color. Okay, so this can be kind of cool for that sepia effect. Okay, find a kind of a reddy or yellowy kind of dust color, and yeah, easy, just turn that on and off. Okay, as a, yeah, colorize is good for that. Okay, so I'm going to actually save this one here now. And what I want to do is I've got an exercise for you. If you go to File, Open, the last one in that is 06D. It's by Ellis Kurvik. I'm just gonna, anyway, let's click Open. Okay, and this one here, beautiful photograph, and you know, it's cool the way it is, but let's say that we want to make this guy's a little bluer and the trees and the water a little bit more saturated. So I'd like to use you to do this for an example. Okay, so go to your adjustments panel and use your hue and saturation. And I want you to see if you can practice your techniques, raising the blues, see if there's any cyans in there, greens, and just kind of, I guess, make it a little richer. All right, my friends, that is going to be the end of hue adjustments. Okay, we did some big sliding adjustments for that first image, but then we got a little bit more and more specific as we got along, just kind of tweaking the colors towards the end of this exercise. So do your homework, and I will see you in the next video where we start working with text. Hi there, in this tutorial, we're going to look at type in Photoshop. Now we're going to create a little mini design project. It's going to be a postcard, Mother's Day sale type thing. And yeah, we're going to explore type throughout. All right, let's get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is, let's say we've got an image we want to use, right? Which is, let's go to File, Open. And in your source files, it's called 07A. We've used this image before by Errol. Okay, let's click Open. And instead of trying to resize this into a postcard size, that's what people tend to do. Let's say you want to do something for like a US letter or A4, as they try and grab this and try and reshape it into the right dimensions. It's way easier in Photoshop to go to File, New, create the right size, then drag that in and use our cool little scale option to kind of resize it so it fits. It's definitely easier doing it that way. What you'll also find in Photoshop is that you can just type in your inches along the top here, or switch it to centimeters or millimeters, depending on which part of the world you're in. What we're going to do is we're going to go to print, and there's some default templates in here. Okay, you can see there's US letter, legal, tabloid, A4. Click on this little view all presets. And what I'm looking for is one in here called, it's not in here at all. Okay, it's under art and illustration, and it's this one here called postcard. So with it selected, it's done a few things. It's given it the right height and width. No, in different parts of the world, it's actually different sizes. We're going to use the US, and what we're going to do is we're going to make a landscape. Okay, just for this one. We're not going to change anything else. Just make sure yours looks like mine in terms of resolution and color mode, but we'll discuss that later on. Let's click Create. Now let's go and save this thing. And what you'll notice is that saves grayed out. It's weird. Photoshop, it's one of the kind of quirks of Photoshop. It says, well, you haven't done anything to this, so I'm not going to save it. So if I grab the text tool and started adding text, it would start. It'll allow me to save, or just go to File, Save As. Okay, and I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to put it into my source files, and I'm going to call this one Dan's Postcard. Postcard even. Let's click Save. Now we're going to use our fancy trick we learned earlier in this course. We're going to go to our image of flowers. We're going to grab our move tool. We're going to click, hold, drag into the tab. Keep holding the mouse down and then let go down here. All right, so it's the wrong size. Okay, I kind of did that on purpose so we can practice our resizing. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to look at rotating it as well. So make sure our layer here is selected. It's got the little icon or the little thumbnail of our flowers. Let's zoom out. Who remembers what the shortcut is? That's right, Command minus on a Mac, Control minus on a PC. We're going to zoom out so we can see the edges like we did earlier. Let's go to Edit, let's go down to Transform, and let's look at Scale. Okay, and he's actually reasonably the right size, but I want to rotate it around. So let's go to Edit, Transform, and let's go to Rotate. Okay, and it's the same kind of thing. Grab any of the corners, okay, and drag it around. Now, remember when we did the scale, and we held Shift and it would kind of resize it proportionately. Holding Shift in this case, when we're using the Rotate tool, okay, it just kind of locks it into 45-degree angles. Okay, so it's just nice little steps. So I'm going to rotate mine around so it looks like that. Then I'm going to go back to Scale, Edit, Transform, Scale, grab the corner, and remember holding Shift, drag down, and let's get it to a sort of size like this. You can drag the center it afterwards by letting go. You can let go of Shift and just drag the center. Don't drag the little dot in the center. Okay, it's just the center of rotation. Just won't do what you want. Just drag anywhere else in here and we can move it around. Okay, I'm not too worried too much about the edges at the moment. Okay, I just want to get it kind of lined up-ish like that. Now remember, nothing works. Why is it not working? We've got to press Enter on your keyboard or Return. Okay, just say, I'm done. That's what I wanted to do. All right, so let's now add some text. Okay, so down here is your text tool. Now, actually, let's zoom in a little bit. You remember the shortcut is Command plus on a Mac, Control plus on a PC. Grab the type tool. It says capital T here. Okay, and what you can do is, we're going to learn the kind of two ways of adding text. The first way is clicking once. Okay, and you can type in, and it just kind of goes forever. I'm just mashing away at the keyboard to give you an instance. Now, if your font is a whole lot bigger or a different color, it doesn't really matter. What you might do is select it all and change the font either over here. You can do it in both places, the top or over here on the right, down to something like 10 point for this example. So that's one way of adding type. When you're finished, okay, you can go back to the Move tool, and that kind of commits that change. And I want to show you the other way of adding type. That's good for headings. So, but if you've got some like say body copy that wants to go in, grab the type tool. And before you start typing, actually, no, that's fine. Okay, is just to click, hold, and drag out a box. Okay, whereas before we just clicked once and we started typing. This one we clicked, held the mouse down and dragged out a box. What this is cool for is I'm mashing away at the keyboard again, but you can see it kind of breaks onto different lines. Okay, it's a good way of putting in body copy. If yours is like mine, there's these massive big gaps in between the lines here. Okay, I'm going to select it all by using my type tool and just kind of like drag up across all of this. And then over here under line spacing, it is way too big. I'm going to set it back to auto. Cool. So let's look at styling some of this now. So those are the two ways of doing it. Clicking once, and the other one is clicking and dragging a box, depending on what you need. Remember to finish this, go back to the Move tool. Great. So what I'm going to do is I've got these two layers, crazy letters in them. So this first layer here, actually, it doesn't really matter what layer you're on. If you grab the type tool, click anywhere in this top part, I'm going to select all the text, hit delete, and I'm going to type in some proper text now. So yeah, we're going to cover a few more text features, but now it's a little bit, we're doing a little bit of design work. Okay, so Mother's Day sale. I'm going to select all the text. I'm going to make it white. Now you can see I can use the color here or color there. I've got the text selected. I'm going to pick color. And in terms of choosing a color, you use this little slider to pick the hue. Okay, let's say you wanted pink and then you click there for pink. You can see there's my text in that color. You might have to move this out of the way to see what you're doing. What I want is white. And to get white is to grab this little dot that you've put anywhere and just click, hold, and drag it, and drag it kind of like way into this corner. I drag it a little bit past. That means it gets all jammed up in the corner and it's perfectly white. Click OK. I'm using Garamond for my main one just because it's a font that you're likely to have as well. So in terms of font size, that works for me. What I might do is after day, put a return in. Okay, and if the spacing between the lines is not great, okay, we're going to have to adjust it. The other thing we might have to do is this text here is kind of overlapping the one at the back. So let's grab this layer, okay, which is the top one there. I'm going to grab my move tool, and I'm going to say, come down a little bit, buddy. Say way down here. Back to Mother's Day, and I'm going to drag you down a little bit. Awesome. Don't worry if you're finding it a little bit hard to read against the background with your font. We're going to add drop shadows in a future video to this particular text. Let's look at a couple of advanced features. Let's grab the type tool. Let's click once, okay, because I just want a text box that runs on forever. And I'm just going to put in, let's say, save the date. Save the date. Font's a little bit big, so I'm going to have to grab it all. Let's just make it a bit smaller. Okay, and weirdly, it's different all around the world, right? So I'm in Europe at the moment, and it's different from where I'm from in New Zealand. Okay, I think it's the second Sunday in May in New Zealand, but it's not the same in Ireland here, which can be tricky. Sorry, Mum. The reason I'm doing this is I want to select all the text. Okay, and I want to make it capitals. I want to change the font first. I'm going to pick probably one you don't have. You can pick any font you like. I like Museo at the moment. Okay, it's one you can download and buy from Typekit. We're not going to cover how to install fonts specifically just yet, but I'm going to pick, yeah, I like that one. Okay, so pick any font, and let's say I want to make it all capitals. So over here, you've only got some basic kind of features. You've got the font, the kind of font weight, basically whether it's light or bold, and some other basic stuff. You got this advanced button. It's not that advanced. Click on it and it gives you kind of, I don't know, some of the stuff that I'm used to seeing in a type panel. And the one that I want is this third one in, and it says just make all caps. So that's what I want to do. I want to drag the font down. Now, another little tip for fonts, you can see it goes from 18 to 24. Like, what if you want 20? You can just type it in there and hit return, and that'll force it to be. Or the trick that I use quite a lot is, doesn't matter if you're using this one or this one down here. I'm going to close them back in. See this little icon here? If you click and hold and drag on that icon, so I'm just clicking, holding and dragging left and right. If you've got a really slow computer, it doesn't work that flash, but I'm dragging mine. I find that's just a little easier to work out what font I want. Great, I've got mine down to 12 point. Okay, my move tool, and I click it, drag it there. Grab my Mother's Day layer and drag you about there. And this last layer down here, okay, this crazy layer, I'm going to move him to about there. Now, I don't have specific text to go in here, so I'm going to show you a little trick before we leave. We're going to grab the type tool, I'm going to click in here, I'm going to select all this text, we're going to hit delete. Okay, and what we're going to do is put in something called placeholder text, or lorem ipsum. And it's just a really common way of putting in placeholder text. I know that, let's say that I'm the designer in this job, but not the copywriter, and it's coming from the client, and I know it's not coming today. So I just want to put some text in. So cursor flashing, go up to type, and come down to paste lorem ipsum. Now, it's just Latin words. They're just mixed up, so they don't make any sense. And it allows you to design without there being that kind of distraction of fake words in there. What I'm going to do is just delete. It puts in lots. Okay, so I'm deleting lots of mine, just so I've got a little bit of lorem ipsum in there. I'm going to put in a couple of returns. I'm going to put in www.florist, my florist. This is totally made up brand. Okay, myflorist.com. That's probably a website, not mine. So I'm going to select all the text, and now you might want to skip ahead because I'm just styling now, picking white. Okay, what font am I going to use? I'm going to use that Museo again. I like that one. Museo. I like Museo rounded. It's really cool. Back to my move tool. And that's going to be it for this particular course. The big thing to know is that you click once, you get a type box that goes on forever. If you click and drag, you get a box that has an outside or a kind of a break at the end. The other good tip is to select on the layer, and you might need to go into advanced. Now, I don't think advanced is super nerdy stuff. It's just, actually there's some good usable stuff in there. And you also know if you toggle this or keep clicking it, it switches between your advanced character and advanced paragraph. So if you're looking for indents and other stuff, yeah, just keep clicking on this, mash away until you find the one you need. All right, my friends, let's finish this one and get into the next video where we look at doing type on a path. Hi there, in this video we are going to do things like this where we get the, say, photographer's name to flow along the edge of the leaf here, okay, along a path. And down the bottom here we're going to make this particularly ugly badge where we get the text to flow along a circle, and then we're going to make some bulgy text in the middle, okay, all learning cool skills using text in Photoshop. All right, so to get started, let's open the file to get started with. Let's go to File, Open. And in your source files, okay, you can open up 08 warped text. Now, if you are following along this tutorial series in order, okay, you can just use the file that you created in the last video rather than opening up this one. Okay, but if not, open up this file. And what I'm going to have to do, what you might have noticed, is I picked some new fonts. I just couldn't handle Garamond anymore. So I picked some fonts. The trouble is you're not going to have these fonts. So what I'm going to have to do is I don't want there to be any kind of trouble when you're trying to open the document and it's saying you've got no fonts. So what I'm going to have to do is click the top one, hold shift, grab the last one, and dun, 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 we're going to go to layer and we're going to do the merge layers. Now your file's going to open. It's not going to have any trouble, but the text is not editable. Sorry about that. Cool, so let's start with the kind of curve that goes around here that identifies the photographer. Okay, and we'll get, it's called type on a path. Okay, that's the kind of term for it. Now, what we need to do is create a path to follow. And we're going to do two versions. We'll do that plus the little badge down the bottom you saw. And we're going to start with, if you find the pen tool over here and hold it down, so click, hold down the pen tool. Okay, and these extra options pop out. We're going to use the freeform pen tool. If you're already master of the pen tool, use that one. Okay, the freeform pen tool is for people that don't even know what these are. Okay, it's a nice, quick, easy version. So let's grab freeform pen tool. There's kind of two things before we get started. Along the top here, you can pick shape or path. Let's be on path. Okay, and on the top here, there's a cog. Click on the little gear wheel thing and curve fit. Bump it up a little bit, okay? It goes, I think maximum is 10, but go up to 5. All it does is when you draw, it's gonna help you kind of like smooth out the line. So if you're drawing with a mouse and you're finding the line's not very nice, just go into the cog and adjust this curve fit. Cool. So what I'm going to do is I want it to kind of curve around here. It's best to start where you want the text to start. If I start up here and start drawing down, but I want my text to come up this way, it can cause problems. So I'm going to undo, edit, step backwards. So I'm going to start down here and I'm going to try and go up and over. It's a really hard movement to do. If you're finding it hard, I've practiced a couple of times off screen. Okay, so that was okay. And you'll notice that it's curved it out nicely. That's to do with the settings in the cog. So that's an okay start for me. Okay, if you get it wrong, edit, step backwards, give it another go. Once you've got your path though, the interesting things about paths is you don't see them as, they're one of the few things that don't appear in the layers panel. They end up in this path panel. Don't go in there, it's messy and scary, but for this technique, we're going to stay out here in the layers. So all we need to do now to get the text to follow along is grab the type tool, and there's no extra settings. You just got to watch this icon change. You can see by default, it's this kind of like, I don't even know how to describe that that thing there, but you can see it in front of you, right? And when it changes, look, ooh, see the little line going through it? Bad, good, bad, good. That's the icon you're looking for. And wherever you start clicking is where the text is going to start. So I'm going to start somewhere down here. It doesn't have to be perfect. You'll notice my cursor is flashing. Now, if the last thing you did in Photoshop was a really big font, okay, it was up to like 200, it's going to be this giant flashing cursor. So before you start typing, just pick out an appropriate size. I'm going to go real small on mine. It's going to be about 6 point. Pick any font you like. I'm using Museo Sans rounded. Okay, but you can use anything you like. And we're going to type in the artist name. Errol Ahmed. Okay, and yeah, that's type on a path. if you can draw it and you can use the type tool just to click on it, and we'll follow along. There's a couple of things you probably want to do is you can select all the text like normal and make some adjustments, okay, font and size and color. Mine's white. And the other thing you might want to do is this starting position for it. So I'm going to zoom in, remember Command plus on a Mac, Control plus on a PC. Okay, and I'm going to use my little sliders here. I can't use my spacebar shortcut that we learned earlier on because I just learned if you hold down spacebar, it just puts in lots of spacebars. Cool, so we've got this. Now we want a beginning and ending point. You can kind of see them there. There's this little cross icon, that's the beginning, and that's the ending. To adjust where it starts on this line and where it ends, you have to use this tool here. It's just underneath, okay? It's the path selection tool. Now, again, you can hold down this tool. If yours is stuck on the white arrow, that's fine. Just click and hold it down and grab the path selection tool. Cool. And if you click hold, you can drag the beginning point. Drag it back. It's a little bit tough. If you're finding like, man, this is a little confusing, it is. It's a little bit tough to do. And the ending point, I don't really change that. I want it to be as long, but you can see if it's too small, it doesn't have enough room to fit that word and just kind of drops them off. So if you are finding everything's disappearing, you might have to find that little circle, okay, and drag it out to the end of the line. Another thing you can do is click, hold, and drag anywhere in the middle of the line. You can see that little icon. It's all about icons here. See the little arrow there? If you click, hold, and drag it, okay, you can drag it and flip it underneath. And it's kind of flipped underneath. I'm going to go edit, undo. It's not what I want. Step backwards. Okay. I'm going to, though, get mine to kind of move to about there. And the other thing is, do you want to edit the path? Okay, now I can kind of grab any of these points and just kind of drag them along. Sometimes though, if you're not used to using vector paths, it's easier just to go to things like edit, transform path, and go to rotate. And to say you just need to kind of like adjust it a little bit. Hit return, okay, and you can kind of just make some adjustments. Don't just click anywhere on the line, step backwards. Now, if you want to physically move this now, okay, go back to your move tool. Okay, that's probably the easiest to do. What I might do, it's quite bright. I'm going to lower the opacity, not lower the opacity, I'm going to change the color. So I'm clicking on the color of my type, okay, and I'm just going to lower it down to something just a little bit more off-white. We're going to look at drop shadows a little bit. If you're like, man, I wish I could add drop shadows. Why aren't we doing drop shadows? It's in a later tutorial. We'll do that real soon. Trying to segment everything out here. It's a little bit tough. All right, the next thing we'll do is we are going to create the badge, okay, that we saw at the beginning. So I'm going to use a little shortcut to zoom right out completely. We can just hold Command minus and that works. But if you hold Command on a Mac or Control on a PC and just hit the O, it's the one along the top, okay, above all the letters. So not O, Dan, 0, okay, next to 9. Click on that and it just kind of puts it in full screen. It's a handy little trick, little shortcut. All right, so to do the badge, it's quite similar. Instead of using the freeform pen tool to draw the shape, we're going to use the ellipse tool. So if you click and hold down, you probably got the rectangle tool selected by default. Click, hold the mouse down for a while, and then go to the ellipse tool. Okay, and the same thing with this. You can draw with a shape, okay, but it's better to draw with a path. Okay, and remember the path is this kind of like hidden invisible line that the text can follow. So ellipse, path. Now we're going to draw out a circle. I want mine in the bottom right here, okay, somewhere in here. Now if I draw out a circle, okay, I can draw any sort of ellipse that I want. If I want it to be a perfect circle though, the height and width, who can guess what we need to hold down on our keyboard? Have a guess. You might be wrong, you might be right. It's the shift key, okay? It kind of, that shift key constrains the height and width. We did it when we transformed earlier. Remember when we scaled it up and down? We hold down the shift key. Okay, get it to a right sort of size, and then remember, what do I let go first? I let go of my mouse first, and I've got a kind of a circle. We can adjust this later on. Just like before, okay, we've got our path. Now grab the type tool, and we're looking for the right icon. This is a little bit more important because, so bad icon, good icon, but then sneakily, there's another one. Okay, so this is the third group. So you might want to do this on purpose, okay? But if I use this icon where the it's got a dotted circle around the outside, if I click once, it's going to turn it into a shape that I can type into. So I'm typing, I'm putting in a few spaces to break the lines up, but that is a technique. We're not doing it in this course, so we're going to go edit, undo typing. Okay, actually, I'm going to go, what I'm going to do, because you're halfway through typing, okay, I'm going to hit the escape key on my keyboard, top left, just kind of like, escape key is like, I didn't mean it, let's get out of there button, okay, and let's go to edit, step backwards, and we're back. Cool. So we've got our path, and we're going to look for the right icon, bad, bad, good. Okay, and try and get it where you want it to start. I want mine to start in the middle there, kind of. All right, and we're gonna start typing. So I'm typing in all caps, so freshness. Can never spell this word. I am totally gonna pause this and come back and spell it right. Okay, what you'll notice is freshness guaranteed. Okay, oh man, it's probably wrong. It's okay. And what I'm gonna do is I could rotate this around, or what I'm gonna do is my cursor's still flashing in here. You can see a little flashing there. It can be anywhere. I'm just gonna go and be centered text. Okay, so that's gonna kind of try and center it. The problem is it's kind of centered upside down. That's okay. So instead of trying to play around with these markers, okay, there's the little cross and then there's the little circle. They're actually mixed up together here. They're really a bit of a pain. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go through and do this. Edit, transform path, and I'm gonna go to rotate. And this is just easier. Okay, so I'm gonna rotate it around so it's at the top. Hit return, and that's just a nicer way of doing it. These little targets are painful. All right, again, the font size is gonna be up to what you're doing. I'm gonna go down to like 5 points, probably pretty low. We'd have to print this out and double check whether it's legible on our postcard. It's always an interesting thing when you're working on a screen and need to print. Always print it off, just a budget one in your office, just to see, can you read the text at 5 point? Probably not, but hey ho, this is an example. So I want to leave it there and go on to doing the squidgy text in the middle, but people will inevitably go, hey, how do I put text along the bottom there? And the thing about it is that you can't do it on the same path, okay? So what you do is you duplicate this path and you have two of them and flip it over. Doesn't make sense? Probably not. Let's learn by doing. So what I'm going to do is right click, freshness guaranteed. I'm going to say duplicate layer. Give it a name. What was it called? Next day. You don't actually, it doesn't really matter what you call it. I never name my layers. Okay, you should though. Okay, I'll just call it next day, but you see it hasn't changed the text. What's happened is if I grab my move tool, there's just two of them sitting on top of each other. Now, this is a bit of a hack because say Adobe Illustrator, which would be perfect for doing this exact same badge thing. And you know, there's tutorials on how to do that. But Photoshop does it okay. So let's just look at it. So I've got two of them now. I want to flip it upside down. So let's grab the type tool. Okay, and like before, okay, if I click in there, remember I can kind of drag this so it kind of flips upside down. So where are you? Not using the text tool, that doesn't work. Okay, I'll leave that in there because you'll probably do the same thing. Grab the direct selection tool over here. Okay, the black arrow, and then click, hold and drag and flip it over to the other side. Cool, and it's on the wrong way. So I'm gonna use my edit, transform path, rotate. I'm gonna flip it around. Now, I'm flipping this around. You might have seen before that mine just happened to magically snap like this into these nice little degrees. You can manually do it up the top here. You can see there's a degrees. Okay, but if you hold shift while you're dragging the corners, it just kind of locks it into 45-degree angles. And that's gonna work for me. Hit return. I'll do it one more time. Return. Eventually you'll get it. Okay, so what I want to do is I want it to be kind of, what you'll notice if I grab my move tool and I drag him up, he's kind of in a different sort of, he's on the inside of the line now. So this is where Illustrator has an option to go through and kind of flip it to the outside of the path. What I mean by that is you can see he's sitting on the inside, okay, where I want him to kind of be spread around the outside. And I can't figure out a way to do this in Photoshop. I don't think you can. So if you can, leave me a comment. I'd love to know how. Okay, I don't think you can. So what we can do is just make the circle a little bigger. So the same part, edit, transform path, and let's go to scale. Okay, I want to make it bigger, but I'll hold down shift to get it to kind of be proportionately bigger. Okay, and then it's just kind of working out what seems to work for your design. Try not to click on the line. Okay, move tool. A little bit of transforming, a little bit of wriggling around. And this one down here is not going to be freshness guaranteed anymore. This one's going to be next day delivery. That'll do. Cool. I want to rotate it a little bit longer. You'll notice that I'm not going up to the edit menu much anymore. Okay, if I want to rotate, edit, transform, okay, there are some shortcuts. Free transform is the cool shortcut that does a bit of scaling and a bit of rotation all at once. So if you are like, getting really sick of going up to all these menus, you'll notice that the really common things have undo is Command Z on a Mac or Control Z on a PC. So if you are doing something over and over, just check, there's a little shortcut and you might be able to save some time. All right, so we've got the top one and the bottom one. They're just things on their own layers doing their own thing, okay? But it's the way to get them top and bottom. Next thing I want to do is grab my type tool. I'm going to click in the middle here. I'm going to be centered. I'm going to type 100%. I'm going to pick a font and a size. Bit big. Pick a bold one. So you go off, pick a font and a size. I'm going to stick one in the middle here, and we're going to use one of the easiest features. So with it selected here, go to your type tool. Okay, or with it selected, sorry, just make sure it's the layer is selected. It's kind of this light gray. Make sure you're in your type tool, and there's this little icon here. Okay, this little icon here is the warp text tool option. Okay, and watch this. Let's get down here. So style none. Let's go to arc, and it's going to arc it. Lower arc, arch. I'm just reading stuff out now. Flag is cool. And the best one of all, there's never not a good time to use fish. Okay, so have a play around with them. They've all got options you can make, just drag these left and right, decide which say the fish head goes. There's lots of kind of adjustments on them all. If you do find you've kind of destroyed it and they're not really working anymore because you've changed too many settings, a little trick is hold down the Alt key on a PC or an Option key on a Mac. You see the cancel. So I'm just tapping that key. So I'm on my Mac, so I'm holding down Option and it just clicks reset and everything goes back to normal. And what I want is bulge. There you are. Cool. And I'm just going to find a thing that works for my thing. That looks good. It doesn't, but it's okay. We've learned the tool. Let's click OK. All right, so that is the end of the tutorial, but now it is time for your homework. Okay, I would like you to take your newfound skills doing type on a path, okay, and make a badge for another company. Okay, it's a real association. It's this one here. If you go to your exercise files or your source files, it's 08B called badge exercise. There's the text, okay? So it's the Association for Pet Obesity Prevention. Check out their website, okay? And I'd like you to create a badge kind of similar to what we did here in our exercise. Okay, it doesn't have to be exactly like this. Use a bit of creativeness in there. Okay, and I'd love to see what you come up with. Okay, so pick fonts, colors, ways of using the type in here, and I'd love to see either a JPEG or a screenshot of it, okay, and either post it in the forum as outlined at the beginning there, or send it to us on social media. So for Envato Tuts Plus, they are Tuts Plus Design on Twitter. I'm Dan Loves Adobe on Twitter. But for Instagram, find me at Bring Your Own Laptop and just tag me in it. I'd love to see what you do. I'll give you some feedback if you ask for it, or let's just share what everyone's doing. We'd love to, see what you're up to. All right, friends, that is it for this video. Let's get into the next one where we start looking at drop shadows finally. You're like, man, let's add some drop shadows to this text so it's more believable or readable. It's time to do that next in the next group of videos. See you there. All right, in this video, we're going to take the design we've been working on where the text is a little hard to read, and we're going to add, ready, drop shadows. And we're going to look at bevel and emboss, and get ready for it. We're going to hammer it with a gradient overlay. We're going to look at some of the other layer effects also in Photoshop, plus kind of lifting text with just a nice black box and playing with opacity. All right, lots of effects to learn in this tutorial. Let's get started. Okay, so first up, if you are continuing along in the series, okay, you can just work on your file. If you are not, go and open up 09 effects from your source files. And we're going to add, first up, a drop shadow to this big Mother's Day sale text. So just make sure in your layers panel here, you have the layer that you want to change selected. It's kind of this light gray. And down the bottom here, there's this little FX button. Click on it. Okay, and here are all the things we're going to look at in this tutorial. Okay, so we'll start with drop shadow. Here's the easy one. Now mine, you can see it's added a drop shadow. Got this big thing in the way. To move it, see this kind of light gray area here, just click, hold, and drag it to get it to a point where you can see what you're doing in the background here, and work with this panel. Now it'll remember the last thing you did, so yours is going to look a little different from mine. So let's look at the basics. Okay, so let's look at the distance first. Crank it right up. like right up, get it up to like 25. You can see it's the distance away from the type there. Then this angle here becomes a little bit more obvious. You can see I'm just dragging this little dial here, and it's just kind of the way that the light affects it. Okay, so it's up to you what you want your drop shadow to do. Let's look at these other two, and before I give you my kind of like the way I do drop shadows anyway. Spread you're not going to use too much. It depends on whether the kind of feathering is pushed right to the outside. It kind of does a weird choke around the outside. Don't use spread. The main one is size. Size is how fuzzy it is. Okay, so you can see I'm dragging it smaller, and you can see it's got, when it's down to 6 points, okay, you can still kind of see the text, but if I get quite high, it becomes this kind of like vague blur. Now, if you're like, how's it working? Is it better? Turn this preview on and off, just get a sense of what it's doing. Okay, so it's really up to you what you want to do. What I like to do is I like a straight up and down, okay, angle. So I'm putting 90 degrees, and I like the distance quite low, and I like the size quite low. So it will depend on your image and text. Okay, so I do like about maybe 5 by 0 by 5 is kind of where I end up being. You can see this. It's just a subtle turning it on and off. I don't know. I like that kind of drop shadow. You don't have to like it. Okay, but yeah, have a play around with that to get the settings you like. Let's look at doing one more, and we'll bring up some options. So if we click OK, we're done. Let's say I want to edit it again, because you're like, man, I wish I would change it again. You double click on this word drop shadow, okay, and it opens up. So you can go and make amends. I'm going to click OK. So let's do it to the save the date along the top here. Actually, let's do it to the photo, this one here, the name of the photographer. So let's select the layer. Let's go down to effects, and let's add a drop shadow. And let's say we want to do something different here, okay, because it's smaller text, and can I zoom in? I can. I can still use my shortcut to zoom in, which is kind of cool, using my spacebar key to drag it around. So what I want to do is I want to do something different here, because the size and distance don't work for this thing. And same with the angle. And the angle is the big, I guess, important one. It's this thing called global light. So what ends up happening, if you use the word global light, it just means that if I change this one for this text, it's going to affect everything else. Okay, so it's going to say, it's going to adjust this one. So if I want to adjust this one separately, I have to untick it. Let's look what I mean. If I rotate it around here, because I feel that's better, because it's on an angle, can you see it adjusted, this one here? I'm going to switch it around, you'll start to see. Okay, so the trouble with this, I'm going to put it back to 90. So they're all at 90. Then I'm going to untick this, and now watch this guy here. I'm going to crank up the opacity. That's one thing I didn't mention in the last one, the opacity. Okay, how much you can see of it. Crank it up to 100% so you can see. And this one here, 5 by 5 doesn't really work. So I'm going down 3 by 3, okay, to kind of get it to come out, but the opacity down a little bit. But because global light's off, it's not affecting the angle here. Cool, let's click OK. Let's look at another way of kind of like lifting text off the page. We'll use bevel and emboss. Now, bevel and emboss works really well with thick text. It's not going to work with any of this kind of like lightweight text. So I'm going to click on this one here, 100%, make sure it's selected in my layers panel. Down here, let's go to bevel and emboss. Okay, and I'm going to move it out of the way. It's always in the way. Okay, there we go. There, that'll work. Cool. So these are the defaults. Okay, and it's a bit of experimenting here, and you can kind of look at this as a kind of a really clear indication of what's happening, and down here how it's affecting the type. First of all, the style. Emboss tends to look. Emboss does both the outside of the text and the inner part. Okay, pillow emboss kind of looks like it's sitting in something. Outer bevel. Just the outside, so it's kind of lifting off the background. There's different techniques for kind of deciding, it's a personal choice here. Okay, I don't like bevels much at all, but people do, so we'll show them. Okay, so what am I going to use? I'm going to use inner bevel. And let's have a quick little look. Smooth, chisel hard. Just look at the edge here. It gets a little bit more, you can see there. Oh, I kind of like it. Kind of do. Almost there. Depth is how, basically it's how much the shadows you get. Okay, how extreme it looks. I feel like it should be a bank letters on the front of a bank or a lawyer's building. It needs this kind of like chiseled. You need to use Trajan, the font, and you need to use chisel hard bevel. Again, size and soften, they're going to kind of make sense as you experiment with them. You can kind of see it says here how much, depends on how thick your type is. If it's really thin, you're not going to see anything. In this case, you can't see much of a change either because the font's quite small. Okay. So there you go, it's kind of a flat spot on the top, which I don't like. Okay, soften. I'm not sure why you'd go chisel hard and soften it, but anyway. There's more and more complexity you can get into here. At this Essentials course, we're not going to go into like the super hardcore stuff. Just play around with it, experiment with it until you get it how you like. When you finish, click OK. One of the things I want to show you, and one of the other, we're going to combine two things we're learning. One is one of the other effects. So I want two effects applied to this thing. I want to change the color of it as well. So the effect is called color overlay, but how do you add more than one? Okay, you can do it by double clicking where it says bevel and emboss to open it back up again. And you can see on the top here are all the other options I had down the bottom in this effects panel. Okay, so bevel and emboss, we're going to look at color overlay. Watch this, if I turn the tick on, it's working. It's kind of made it a different color. But there's a bit of a gotcha. What ends up happening is I've turned the tick on and off, but you can see over here it still shows bevel and emboss. Look, because I can turn lots of these on. Okay, I need to actually click on the word color overlay to bring up the options for it. So you might be ticking this on and then thinking you're at there. Okay, or at least say, let's do it again, tick that on and thinking you're there making adjustments, but nothing's changing. Okay, it's because you need to actually click on it. So I'm going to turn all of these off except for color overlay. Color overlay, I'm going to click on it and click on this little square here. Yours is probably set to red by default. It remembers the last thing you did. Like when we're picking font colors, you can just drag this hue slider to get it to somewhere you want. Okay, and pick a color. Doesn't have to be that bad. Come on, Dan. I'm not sure what color I'm going for, but you get the idea, right? So drag the hue slider up. Now click in here for the circle you want, and then just keep an eye out here how it affects my chisel. All right, if you're looking for branded colors, you might type in the RGB colors here or the CMYK colors if you have it, or maybe the hexadecimal numbers to be really precise. Let's click OK. So we've got two things applying now. Let's click OK. So those are a couple of effects, and we've used those mainly to kind of make the text pop off the page. What I'm going to show you is a technique that I use. It's not an effect, but it does the same type of thing. It's just using a big old rectangle. So you saw it at the beginning, okay, in the intro. So if you grab the rectangle tool, the only trouble with what we've got here is last time we were using it, remember we were using the ellipse tool to do the badge, okay? And as soon as we went to the ellipse tool, we changed it from shape to path, which is going to cause problems now because we don't want a path, we want an actual big shape. Okay, so the path is just kind of like an invisible outline, whereas the shape's an actual thing on the page. So rectangle tool, shape, up at the top here, fill color, click on it, pick a color from the swatches. I'm just picking black. If you want to get a bit more detailed, you can click on this option, gets you back into our lovely color picker. Cancel. I'm just going to use black. And click off in the top here, and for the stroke, I'm going to have no stroke, which is this little red line here that says, I don't want any color, please. Click off. What am I going to do? I'm going to draw a rectangle that kind of starts off the page and kind of goes in here. Cool. I'm going to move it back to my move tool. I'm going to move it down a little bit. And the trouble is that it's on top of my text. Yours might be different depending on kind of what you last were doing. So like before, remember in our layers exercise, we're going to click, hold, and drag rectangle down, way down the bottom here. I'm just dragging it just in front of my flower. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the Lorem Ipsum text now, move tool, I'm going to try and drag it down. Now, what you might find is moving stuff is quite tough. Okay, and we're at a point now where, I don't know, like this might be an option for you. I prefer to have the move tool and have auto select off. Okay, auto select on just means whatever you click on, watch the layers panel over here. What do I click on the background? It jumps to it, jumps to that, which is kind of cool, right? I find, especially with really thin type like this, I just turn it off, okay, and I just make sure I'm very consistent over here, my layers panel. So that's what I'm going to do for the rest of the course. I'm going to say, be on this layer, move tool, and it doesn't really matter where you click now, it's going to move that particular layer. It's not going to automatically do it. Cool. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. I'm going to drag it across a little bit. Cool. And I want to lower the opacity quite a bit. So with the rectangle layer selected, let's lower the opacity of this. It just makes it a bit more see-through. Yep. So that's just another technique instead of using drop shadows. You see it quite a bit. But you might hate it. That's okay. You might love the chiseled bevel and emboss. That's okay too. All right, next thing we'll just look at one or two more. You can experiment with them all. We'll look at putting a stroke around the outside. Let's do it to the mother text. So Mother's Day sale. Okay, double click, because we're going to add two to it. Remember, drop shadow and double click. and we're going to add a stroke around the outside. Remember, turn the tick on, make sure you're actually there, it goes gray, okay, and you'll see I've got a little stroke around the outside. Let's zoom in a little bit using my shortcut keys. There's kind of two things to work with. One is I'll change the color first of all. So color down here, pick a hue. I'm going to go for that kind of like orangey red thing I was doing before. And let's crank the size up. Okay. Size is too much at the moment. Okay. What we want to do is the position is inside, which is doing weird stuff to my type. You might like it. I'm going to go to the outside. So it's like a stroke around the outside of the type. Okay. And then you can do this kind of thing. Now we're doing it with type. It can be done with any sort of shape. Okay, that rectangle can have a stroke around the outside. An image that you've masked out can have a stroke around the outside. Yeah, it's up to you. All right, let's do one more before we go because it's kind of cool and kind of gets us into some slightly more, not advanced, but just growing our learning in Photoshop. So I'm going to zoom all the way out, Command 0 or Control 0. Actually, I might go one more. We're going to work on this layer here, layer 1. Let's be a bit more proper about it. Double click layer 1 and call it flowers. Return. You actually have to double click on the actual letters there to be able to type over the top. And we're going to do a gradient overlay. Why? Because it's super in fashion now. If you're watching this and it's like a 10-year-old course, it's not going to be super fashionable, but at the moment we love a bit of gradient overlays on images. So let's have a look. Okay, with the layer selected, it's great. Let's go to Effects. Let's go to Gradient Overlay. Okay, and depending on what you, if you're brand new to it, yours is going to look pretty close to mine. You might have adjusted yours in the past. So what we're going to do is we're going to do two things. We're going to pick a nice gradient, okay, and then we're going to go and look at how to blend it with the background. Now, deciding on nice colors for gradients, Envato's got, let's have a little look. I just Googled in the Envato elements, okay, and there's just lots of good ideas for gradients in here. Just type in gradients in the search and just have a look and find stuff. Like this particular gradient background pack has some really cool colors that you can, get ideas from. So once you've got an idea for a gradient, jump back into Photoshop. And you drop down this little gradient arrow here, this little chevron, click on that, and you've got some built-in ones. Oh my goodness, there are some bad ones. Okay, these have been in here forever. Yeah, they're bad. Anyway, let's click on just this kind of standard black to white one. It's a good, easy one to start with. Now click it back in. Now to adjust the actual color, click anywhere in this kind of color box here. And this big ugly thing opens up and we can go in and adjust the colors. Now you're just using these bottom little cubes here, like little houses. Don't use the top ones. So the bottom ones here, if you double click on it, you can use your hue slider to get the hue you want. Okay, and then pick a color. I'm gonna pick a color that I saw. It's kind of like an orangey peach color. I figured that out earlier on when I was playing around. Okay, click OK. So that's the beginning of it. Double click this last one and do the end. And I figured out the color that I wanted. Okay, I just copied and pasted it from when I was playing around before. Okay, let's click OK and let's click OK again. Now, gradient overlay is kind of cool. Okay, the thing is it's ruined my image, but you saw at the beginning there I had a kind of a mixture with the background, and this is something to do with something called the blending mode. Now, blending modes are super awesome and handy. Normal, it does exactly what it kind of meant to. Okay, but if you have a play around with any of these other ones, it's going to affect the background a lot better. Okay, so let's look at dissolve. It's never a great one. Darken starts getting a bit more exciting, and it's kind of cool what it's doing, right? It's always in the way. Let's move you over there. Can't. Okay. That'll do. And you just got to keep going through this list. Multiply. It's kind of cool. Color burn. Linear burn. I already had a play. And I liked, overlay's kind of a cool one. And so is soft light. But I really liked hard light. Where are you, hard light? Why can't I find you? You can see it. Oh, there he is. He's the next one down. Okay. It's a bit strong. Okay. I know we're kind of, I guess, we're destroying the images quite a bit. But I'm liking this kind of thing. What you might do though is lower the opacity a little bit just to kind of bring highlights a bit strong. So maybe something like that. Then play around with the angle of this bit, get it how you want. How do I want it? I'm just going to drag it around forever while you watch. You get the idea, right? So that's my gradient overlay. Okay, we've used a linear one. You can use a radial one, which is just like a circle in the middle coming out. Okay, but I'm going to use linear. And yeah, That's going to be it for this video. Okay, there's a few other layer styles that you can go through and practice with. And it is time for your homework. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is you've used the image here from Errol Ahmed. What I'd like you to do is either using your Envato Elements account, go find a new image. Or if you don't have access to that, go to Unsplash and find your own image, find your own gradient, and I'd love to see what kind of combination you come up with. You can use the text that we've used here or go and adjust it maybe for your own personal brand or the company that you work for. And I'd like to see what you've kind of come up with. You're allowed to just show and tell. You can ask for criticism if you like as well, and I will be kind and give you any pointers. You're allowed to use chisel embosses as well. I promise not to comment on them. So do that and share it with us on social media. Remember Twitter, look for Tuts Plus Design, and I'm on Twitter as Dan Loves Adobe. On Instagram, I am Bring Your Own Laptop. Tag us in it, and we'll comment, and we'd love to see what you do. All right, let's get into the next videos where we start looking at cropping and resizing images. Not as exciting as gradients, but very important. All right. Let's go do that. Hi there, in this video we're going to learn some basic cropping, but we're also going to do some magic cropping where we take this image here, we want it to be landscape, and you can see here when I do the cropping there's some edges here that just don't exist, they never existed in the world, but ready, steady, we magic them up using the crop tool. All right, so let's go and learn how to do that now in Photoshop. All right, to get started, we're going to open up all three of our images. Okay, a nice little trick just to add to our super fantastic Photoshop skills is I'm just using my source window. I'm in a Mac, so it's Finder, so I'm nothing to do with Photoshop. I can see Photoshop though. Good look, what if I click, hold, and drag all three of these guys just anywhere in the middle here? Hey, they're all open. Click on Photoshop and there's my tabs. That's a nice easy way to get started. Let's start with this first one, 10A, and let's be on our crop tool. Now the crop tool is about the fifth tool down, exactly the fifth tool down. Grab it. Okay, and the basic use of the crop tool, just make sure at the top here you're on this one here, it says WH in resolution. Like otherwise, if you've played with it before, it can cause problems. So just make sure you're on that option and you can grab any of the corners and resize it. When you're ready, hit return. And that is cropping. Okay, I'm going to go to Edit Undo and give us a few extra skills. So back to the crop tool, you get these kind of dots on the outside. And watch this, if I hover here, I can resize it. But if I hover just outside, can you see it goes from this like little straight arrow to bendy arrow? And I can click, hold, and drag. It's really strange. If you're like, man, feels really weird. It is really weird. Photoshop decided this is the best way to do it. And it's just a nice way. Can you see my horizon line? It's actually perfect in this photograph. Okay, thank you, Annie. But you might want to adjust this one. Okay, so I rotate it around, hit return, and now I've got this weird crop. You're less likely to be making it a weird crop and kind of fixing it up so it's straight, but know that you can rotate it that way. Now the next thing to do is, let's say we want it to be a specific size. I always find we go to File, New, make the document size you want, and then drag it into it. We did that in an earlier video when we started looking at text in this course. Go jump and do that one if you are interested in doing that method. Okay, but a different way is to do it within the image. Okay, so up the top here, there's some basic kind of presets. Let's say I want a kind of really traditional photograph size. Okay, so 5 inches by 8. I click on it. And it gives me a little preview saying, yeah, I'm going to have to trim off these areas to make that happen. The cool thing about that though is I'll hit return. I know it's perfectly going to fit in, say it's an art print and it's going into a frame. Okay, it's going to fit in the, the 5 by 7. If you need a different ratio, you can just type it in at the top here. Okay, and if you need to flip it around, so you need it the other way around, click on this little option here. It goes from kind of portrait to landscape. If you need it to be a physical size, okay, you want it to be 200 millimeters or by 300 millimeters, you can go to this top option here, height and width. Okay, and you can say I'd like you to be, say, 300 centimeters. Okay, I should probably be using millimeters, but it's giving me that particular ratio, chopping the top and bottom off a little. Okay, to get out of this, because I've kind of wrecked it, you've got to hit escape twice on your keyboard. Okay, escape's in the top left. Okay, we'll get back out of there. We're going to also hit clear, because if you don't, the next time, say you don't crop anything for like 2 months, you come back in, it's going to remember those and it's going to confuse you. Okay, it's going to be trying to do stuff. You're like, why are you doing this weird shape? The next thing we'll do will be our super mega amazing thing in Photoshop. Okay, I love this feature. So what we're going to do is I want it to be my 5 by 7. Okay, I'd like to flip it around so it is landscape. And the trouble with it like this is that obviously the crop is a little wrong. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag my image to kind of get it somewhere. And then you're like, it's not quite working. So I'm going to let go. Now I can drag these edges, and because it's locked into this ratio here, it's not going to kind of bend anyway. It's going to kind of resize nicely. Okay, so I'm going to get it to a point where like this, and then I'm going to try not to drag this little dot here, drag anywhere else. Okay, I'm going to get it to like, I want it to be like this. The only trouble with this kind of crop is that it was originally shot the other way around. So I need to be landscape, and there's this extra gap here, just going to be blank, unless super magic content aware. Okay, turn that on. It's a little underwhelming tick, but I'm ready for the magic. We're going to click the little plus button or return on your keyboard. Give it a sec. Get ready. Oh, it magicked up more background. Cool, huh? Okay, it's kind of done a little bit of weird stuff over here. Okay, but it's magicked up new table that side. It's pretty impressive. It doesn't work on all images all the time. We'll look at a couple of other examples, but it is pretty amazing, especially for this kind of like, I don't know. It's got a gradient in the background, some wood grain here. It's done a great job this side. Not so good this side, but still pretty amazing. Let's look at another example. So this is 10B. Now, the only trouble with our crop tool at the moment is that it's trying to do this thing. It remembers, remember. Let's go back to width, height, and rotation. Make sure it's cleared. I say width, height, and rotation, width, height, and resolution. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I don't want this kind of like traditional kind of photography size. What I want is, let's say I'm doing something for social media, and it's like I'm doing a banner for Facebook. Okay, that kind of big banner ad at the top there. Or say you're doing, I do a lot of HTML banner ads, and they just got really weird sizes. Or it might be a double page spread, and you just need to make it wider. Something like this. I chose this example because it's going to probably do well. Make sure content aware is ticked on. Let's click the plus button or hit return on your keyboard, and it just does a really nice way of duplicating the background. Cool, huh? This one did a perfect job because the background's quite simple. And what you'll find is nature is pretty good, because it can kind of mix it around and do its stuff, do it in a nice kind of organic way. Where it becomes quite troublesome is if there's like really linear lines. So let's have a look at this last example by Brooke. Okay, and let's do the same thing. I'm going to grab my crop tool, make sure content aware is on. I'm going to drag it out. Okay, so I just want a bigger option. Okay, nice little square. Hit enter on my keyboard and give it a sec. And it's going to do an okay job. I've already practiced, but there's going to be a few things obvious. Okay, so hey, we've got 2 lemons. That's a bit weird. We've got 2 of these. Okay, the lines don't quite line up. This one's done okay. That bit looks good. Okay, so there are just times where this thing just doesn't work at all. It's done an okay job, but it's a little bit obvious of a few of these. Later on in the course, we'll do a bit more retouching where we'll show you how to fix it up once you've got to this stage, just to kind of get rid of double lemons. But yeah, I guess I want to show you with really cool examples like this guy. And this one here did a pretty amazing job. And then to show you an example that doesn't always work. All right, so that is cropping. We did some rotating, and then we turned on content aware fill. You might want to turn this off before you finish this class, just so that it's not trying to do it all the time. You turn it on purposely. All right, my friends, we will see you in the next video. What are we doing in the next video? We're talking about resizing and resolution. Hi there, it's real me. I'm back again for this video because we're going to talk about resolution. And resolution can be a little bit difficult. I find it's a little easier when I wave my arms around for this one. So what we'll do is we'll go through some practical examples and cut back and forth to the computer to explain it. All right, so let's get started. First by opening up 2 images. It's 11A resolution from your exercise files. Okay, and these ones are from Jonathan Francisca, both of them. Okay, and what we're going to look at is kind of resolution gets kind of, we talk about high and low resolution, good quality, bad quality. So this first one, A, is good quality, high resolution. And this one here is low quality, bad resolution. It'll open up in your Photoshop quite small, and just hit Command plus on a Mac, Control plus on a PC to zoom in. You can see we've all seen examples of this where it gets kind of all a bit pixelated. I'm going to zoom out about there. Okay, there's just not enough resolution or density of pixels in it to make it look convincing. This bigger version here though has the exact same problem, okay? But the cool thing about it is the human eye and the human brain can't tell the difference between lots of little cubes and a real image. So what do I mean? If I zoom in, okay, Command plus or Control plus, it's actually just made up of, if I get close enough, of tiny little cubes. But far enough away, my human brain can't tell the difference. So they get referred to often in, there's two kind of main sizes. There's 72 dots per inch versus 300 dots per inch, okay? And that's just kind of like quality levels. And let's say that most images that are born, okay, through a digital camera or through stock library sites are gonna come at this 72 dots per inch. So let's check that. Let's go to image and let's go to image size. And we can check that this one is indeed 72 dots per inch. Okay, we also use pixels per inch, depends on which kind of realm you come from. PPI or DPI, people refer to them as, just the shortened version. It doesn't matter, they're interchangeable in this case. So this thing here is 72 dots per inch, and it is really big. You can see it is 72 inches across. So let's say we have been asked, we're going to get this image ready now for print. And the specifications have said, we would like this document at 300 DPI or PPI, okay? And we want it as the biggest size we can get. So what we do here is, let's say we've got our image, we need to send it off to the printer or send it to a newspaper. We're going to go to image, image size. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure resample's off. Okay, when we're resizing original artwork, resample off is best to get started with. And let's turn the resolution to what they asked for, which is 300. And what you would have noticed is that you've noticed the size changed. It went from like a really big 72 inches down to something quite small, 17. Okay, and we'll cut to some real life footage now when I'm going to wave my arms around. All right, so here I am, arm waving time. So what ends up happening, right, is you've got this document, it's 72 dots per inch, and it's really big, 72 inches, right? It's really, really big. Okay, so, but the requirement is 300. Okay, so what that means is my 72 dots in an inch, say my inch is this big, okay, and there's 72 little squares in there, okay, but the requirements are I need 300 in there, not 72, I need more. So what you do is you end up telling Photoshop like cram 300 in that same square instead of 72. And what it does is it says, well, there's all this stuff out here, I'm just gonna keep grabbing it and cramming more into that 1 inch. So instead of 72, I'm gonna grab some more, now there's 100. I'm gonna grab some more of them, come in here guys, and they pile them on and squeeze them all in, gets up to 200 and keep squeezing them in, and they pull them all in until there's 300 of them in that same inch instead of 72. And the cool thing about it is that now that one same inch has a lot more detail in it, and it looks really good for print. And that's what print needs. Our human brains can be convinced by a print, okay, that's at 300 dots in that inch. Anything less and you start going like, oh, I can start to see the little dots. Okay, so, and anything more we don't need. Our little brains don't need any more than 300 dots in that little inch. You can go more. So that's why we need it. And what the trade-off is though, is because I've grabbed all those dots that were hanging out here and pulled them in, the physical size of the whole document got smaller, about a third smaller. Okay, so we had to kind of cram them all in, but the drawback is the physical size gets smaller. And that's, I guess, just one of the trade-offs when you are working, especially with print, and you've been asked for 300 DPI. Just know that whatever image you've got, it's going to be about a third. I know it's not perfectly a third, but yeah, it's about that. Okay, so the next thing to think about is, let's say I need it to be 300 DPI. Okay, so that job's finished. We're done with that one. We got it. It's a bit smaller. I think it's 17 inches across now at 300 DPI. Job done. Send it to them. That's as big as it can be at that resolution. But let's say there's a chance where, or there's a time where you're like, actually, it needs to be 300 and it has to be 18 inches across. You've just done that little calculation and Photoshop said it can't be. Can only be 17. You're like, What you can do is, remember that little checkbox? We'll go check it again in a second. That little checkbox that says resample, that's the thing where you tick that and you type in 300 and you force it to be 18, okay? And Photoshop will do its best. It'll just invent new pixels, okay? So it pulled in all the ones it needed and then it goes, well, I still need some more. So I'm just gonna like start messing about with the file and start duplicating them and making more. And that's totally fine when you get to a certain kind of like a little extra half an inch, no problem. Nobody's going to notice. Okay. But if you say I need it to be, I need it to be 50 inches across at 300, Photoshop's going to try its best. It's probably going to melt down trying to do this job. Okay. But it's going to look bad. It's going to have all that yucky goop everywhere, and it's going to try its best. But Photoshop's good, but not that good. Small changes, yeah, great. Turn resample on, increase it a little bit, you're fine. But if you try and do too much, you're going to see all the junk. All right, let's jump back in and do it properly on the computer together. Okay, so let's say it needs to be 18 inches. Oh man, it's just not big enough. You can turn this on and let Photoshop resample it. So I'm going to force it to be 18. Okay, and what's going to happen is Photoshop is going to try its best to like magic up new pixels. They didn't exist before. It's going to do its best to magic them up. And with a small change like this, okay, we went from 17 to 18, you're not going to notice. Okay, it's when you're trying to do massive changes. If they're like, it needs to be 22, okay, you're going to actually start to see, you can even see it in here. There's this kind of like goop that appears. Okay, it's just resampling goop, and yeah, it just, Photoshop's trying its best to make up more pixels, but it can't go back in time and make a photograph. So that's kind of like, small changes, nobody's going to notice. Big changes, people are. That's probably one of the main use cases, okay, is when you take an image, you work on it in Photoshop, and it needs to go into a printed document. You might be sending it yourself into Illustrator or into InDesign, okay, and it needs to be 300 pixels per inch. So change it in here, see what size it is, and then go and you might have to turn resample on just to get a little bit more out of it. All right, let's look at one other use case to help you kind of understand resolution. Jump back to Dan's head. All right, one other common use for using Photoshop to resize images is going out to kind of web or social media. And what that means is often they'll say something like, your image can be a maximum of 1600 pixels, okay? And it might be going to, say, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, and you just need to resize your image because at the moment it's quite big, okay? And you shot it on your DSLR or you've downloaded it from the internet, and it's really, really big. You need to get it to a more appropriate size for going out to social media. So let's go and do that now and resize it to about 1600 pixels. Okay, so we need to get that right size. So let's go into image size. And what we're going to do is it needs to be 72 dots per inch. Okay, they might not mention that. They just assume that if it's going up onto a website, okay, because that's the kind of standard website size. And this is where resample needs to be turned on. We made it bigger in the last thing. Okay, you can also make it smaller. Okay, so with resample on, I'm going to say it needs to be pixels. Okay, and it needs to be 1600. Okay, I can't remember what I said on the talking head version. Let's say it was 1600. Okay, and I've kept the link locked there so that it changes the height and width. And now I know it's the perfect size. It's the 1600 across, the biggest they allow, and at the right resolution. I'm going to click OK. Okay, it's going to be a lot smaller, but that's right. That's what the website wanted. So that's what I've given them. Now I'm going to go and do a file, save. I'm going to save it as a JPEG and upload it to the website. Okay, so those are two, hopefully, examples of resolution. It can be a little bit of a rabbit hole of knowledge, but hopefully it gives you a kind of a brief understanding of some of the typical uses, getting images ready for print and getting them ready for a website. All about the resolution. All right, that is the end of that brain-bending exercise. Let's get into something a little more exciting, back into Photoshop, learning things like masks and selections. All right, let's go do it now. Hi there, in this video, we are going to look at some basic selection techniques. We're going to create an Instagram post in this square format. We're going to use the rectangle marquee tool to bring in our cool coffee cup, and then the ellipse marquee tool, like a big circle, put space inside the coffee cup. All right, let's go and learn how to do that now in Photoshop. All right, to get started, let's go to File, New. And over here, I'm going to kind of start with photo and then go and change it loads. Okay, so in here, I'm going to switch it to pixels because Instagram, they've got a square format, right? And it's 600 by 600 at 72 dpi. Okay, that's their resolution. Now that's when this kind of video was made. I always make it double the size just in case, because Instagram seemed to suck in bigger size images, but only display the smaller 600. But I guess when they decide we're gonna display bigger images, we want them to have the higher quality ones. Okay, so we're gonna go 1200 pixels by 1200, make sure RGB 72, click create. Now we're going to open up two images, file open, and in your source files, they are called, where are they, 12A and B. Okay, so these marquee ones. Thank you, Alexandra, and the Norwood themes. So we're going to start with this image here, 12A. Grab the rectangle marquee tool. Okay, click and hold down and make sure you've got the rectangle marquee tool. This is a nice simple one. You can draw out any sort of size you want. Okay, and then we're going to move it over to our image. Now, to get it to be a perfect square, what I'd like to do is go to select and go to deselect. That kind of gets rid of that selection. And who can guess what key I hold down on my keyboard? That's right. It's shift. So I hold shift down and kind of start anywhere up here. It gives me like a perfect square. It's going to work for my Instagram. Okay, got it kind of cropped how I want. If it's not quite right, can you see I can just hover in the middle of the selection and move it around? Okay, get it to where I want. And then all I'm going to do is go back to my move tool, and we're going to use the shortcut that we learned earlier. Remember the fun tab game? You can copy and paste it. I won't come find you, but we'll do it the proper way. Click and drag, 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 back to this original image here, and then the mouse down the whole time and let it drop into here. So what we're going to do now is practice our scaling. So we're going to go to edit, and we're going to go to transform. We're going to go to scale. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to grab the edge, and I want it to come down proportionately. Okay, or scale down. We're going to hold shift. Okay, get it to kind of where I want, roughly there. Roughly there. And then I can kind of drag the middle. Don't drag this little thing in this little target. It's the kind of center of rotation. We don't need to mess with that. Just drag anywhere but there. And kind of get it in the middle. Okay, when you're ready, hit return or enter on your keyboard. Otherwise things don't work. So that's the rectangle marquee tool. Drag things in a big rectangle or square by holding shift, and you can copy and paste things. Let's go to 12B and just look at the very similar ellipse. Okay, elliptical marquee tool. It's going to do exactly what you think it's going to do. Okay, I'm going to draw out an ellipse, and I'm going to go to select, deselect, and if I hold down shift, it's going to be a perfect circle. And I'm just going to kind of crop it there. Okay, we're going to put our space inside of a coffee cup. So again, move tool, drag, drag, drag to this first tab, holding down the mouse key the whole time, let go in the middle, too big, edit, transform, scale, grab the corners, hold shift, drag anywhere but the target. And we're just going to keep dragging it down until it's kind of in a, don't worry too much at the moment. The edges are a bit crisp. We're going to learn more and more features as we go along. This is, I guess, just a quick and easy thing to do. Now, if you're finding it hard to move around because it's jumping around, I quite often just use my keys on my keyboard, okay, the arrows. So I'm just tapping the arrow key to the left and up a little bit. Zoom in. Okay, you can see the edges aren't perfect here. We'll look at doing a bit more of that later in the course. Okay, but just tapping around. When I'm ready, hit return, zoom out. Oh, awesome. Looking cool. Straight to Instagram. Okay, so that's using the marquee tools, okay, the circle one, the ellipse one, sorry, and the rectangle one, nice and quick and easy. What I'd like you to do though is I'd love you to do your own version, okay, find your own coffee cup or plate or bowl, something kind of looking from the top, and find your own image in the inside. Okay, one thing you might find is I just happen to find an image that's a perfect circle. You might be on a more of an angle, okay, so you might do with this layer here selected, go to edit, transform and scale it, and you might have to kind of distort it a little bit to fit in with maybe, you know, the perspective of the image. Okay, I'm not going to, so I'm going to hit escape. It's my undo key. And because you've got probably got access to Envato elements, what I'd like you to do is, like, you don't have to pick, you know, find a coffee cup in here as well. And I typed in, I come into elements here and I typed in photos and used Arial. Okay, I spelt it like Arial, the font to start with, but okay, but some of these images, if you type in Arial, you can find some stuff that you can work with for your example that's kind of looking straight down from the top, and yeah, find something interesting. Once you've got it, okay, find your own coffee cup, find your own Arial image and see if you can combine them as practice. And then with your social media Instagram posts is tag me in Instagram. Okay, so I am at Bring Your Own Laptop. I'd love to see what you do. You can also add it to that forum we mentioned at the beginning there. In Envato, you can look in the forums, and if you search for Adobe Photoshop for beginners, you'll find our little shared group where you can share the things that you've been making. If for some reason you don't have access to elements, try using unsplash.com, okay, and find some images in there. All right, friends, let's get into the next video where we kind of do a bit of masking, but it's a cheap trick. Not a cheap trick, it is a good trick. Quick and easy. Let's look at how to do that next in Photoshop. Hi there, in this video we are going to use Photoshop to take this image and clip it inside a letter like this. Boom. Quick, super easy, all still editable. You can move things around. It's really cool. Let's go learn how to do it now. All right, to get started, open up the source files and open up the one called 13A clipping mask from Bale Murrow. To get started, grab the type tool, click once and type a letter. Okay, now mine's already a ginormous big serif letter because I practiced before the video. And obviously at my font size, you can see it's something ginormous. It's like 900. Weirdly, the font sizes only go to like 72. So yours might be as big as it can be at 72. You can either type in about 900, pick a font, or do what I do and just kind of click and drag to the right on this icon. So I'm clicking, holding my mouse and just dragging to the right. And you can see it goes up way past 72 until you get to kind of a size that you like. And I've decided about 900 something. I'm gonna grab my move tool, get it into position. It doesn't matter what color it is at the moment, okay, because you saw at the beginning, the image is gonna go inside. Now the way this works, it's mainly to do with the layer order. The image has to be on top of the D. Feels a bit weird, but that's the way it works. Now if I drag the background above the D, often it just says no. Okay, so what you can do is just give it a name. Okay, we've run into this problem before, it's locked. So just double click it, call it roses. Okay, and drag it just above, and we are ready to go. To make the magic happen, make sure roses is selected. It's this light gray. Then go up to layer and go to this one here. It says create clipping mask. Ready, steady. Cool, huh? Super easy, super quick, nice clean kind of mask. That's why it's in this section. And it works really good with these kind of simple shapes like like type. So some of the things, so it's easy to get started. Now let's look at a couple of the interesting parts to this technique is I've got roses selected. So if I go to my move tool and move it around, you can see it moves independently of the D, which is really cool because it means I can kind of get it perfect how I want. I can also use the edit, transform, scale, and then I can kind of resize this to how I want it to be. Okay, get in the right position, click return. It's the same for the D layer. Okay, if I click on this and move it around, okay, it's independent. But there's gonna be lots of times where you wanna move them together. So what you can do is click on the first layer, hold shift down on your keyboard, and then click the second layer. They're both light gray now, okay, and I can move them both around and I can both transform them at the same time, okay, just have them both selected. Now I'm gonna go and add the white background and the drop shadow. You don't have to, you can skip on to the next video, but if you wanna hang around, let's put a white background in. Why don't we have a white background now? It's because there's nothing there. It's kind of invisible, and Photoshop uses this checkerboard kind of effect to kind of try to represent invisibility. There's nothing there. Okay, but I want a solid white background and a drop shadow. So what I'm gonna do is down here on my layers panel, I'm gonna click on this little icon here. It's kind of if you hover above it long enough, it'll tell you it's the new layer button. Click on him. And instead of layer one, I'm gonna be real good and call it white background. And the easiest way to fill it with white is with it selected, go up to here to edit, there's a fill option. And from this drop down, yours is probably sent to something else. Okay, I've set mine to white, click OK, and we have a white background. Wow, we have white everywhere. But over here, remember with the bird looking over the top, the white background's too high, click, hold, and drag it. Okay, so it's underneath everything. Next thing I want to do is add a drop shadow to my D. So I'm going to click on the D layer and I'm going to go down to here to effects. I'm going to go to drop shadow and I'm going to mess about with this probably for 10 minutes while trying to figure out what kind of drop shadow I want. The one thing you might have to do is the distance is going to be really small in the size because it remembers the last thing you did. And we're doing drop shadows on really small text. Okay, so first thing to do is just crank up the distance and the size. Or not the size, sorry, the distance, and make sure the opacity is high. So at least you can see your drop shadow, because if the distance is really small, you can mess around with these all you like, but you can't really tell what's going on. So crank it up and yeah, go on to the next video while I mess around with this. All right, in the next video though, we are going to learn how to use the quick selection tool. It's pretty amazing to do selections with, so yeah, I'll see you over there. Hello there! In this video, we are going to do some selections using the quick selection tool. It's quick, it's really good, and it's going to allow us to cut out this image here and put it into our mixed background, kind of interacting with some type. It's quick, it's easy. Let's learn how to do it now in Photoshop. All right, to get started, let's open up two of the files from our downloaded source files. There's 14A and 14B. Thank you, Quino. Let's click open. All right, so we've got two tabs open. We're going to copy this and put it into this file here that I've made. So let's be on 14A. In an earlier tutorial, we used the really basic marquee selection tools. Now we're going to use the kind of probably the most universally useful one. It's the quick selection tool. So if you click and hold down, you might be using the magic wand tool, which is fine, but it's not as good as the quick selection tool. Let's grab him. Now just double check your what your settings are at the top here. I'm going to be on the adding to the selection option, which is a little plus, or you can be on this first option. It doesn't matter, either of those two. And in terms of the brush size, okay, you can drag this up and down and decide on where you need to be. We're going to start with 50 and just show you how it works. Okay, roughly 50, doesn't really matter. Let's just copy my settings there. Cool, and all we need to do is click hold and start dragging across. Now what you'll notice is I'm going to step back. I'm going to go to select, deselect. I don't kind of like start selecting the edge. You don't need to, it's a pretty clever tool. I'm going to just start dragging kind of like around the edge, and can you see the little dotted line? They're the marching ants, and they just help identify what we've got selected. So I'm just going to kind of drag around and drag. You can see it just did a big launch across there. And it kind of just, it's so clever. It just starts thinking, oh, well, you've selected this, so you probably want a bit more of this. And it does, it jumps across. So I'm going to now click over here and start dragging. Okay, and you can see I can let go of my mouse and I've got part of it selected. Sometimes it's a little bit hard. You're like, what have I got selected? What do I not? Okay, and the easiest way to do it is just kind of turn this option on and off. Okay, it's called quick mask mode. Just turn it on. And it just shows you, kind of masks everything out in red. Okay, so turn it on and off just to see. Don't double click it. Okay, so just turn it on and slowly turn it off. What I'm going to do is going to keep just dragging around, and you can see I'm not going anywhere near the edges. It's pretty clever. The only thing it hasn't done is these little guys in the bottom here. Now I've picked a pretty good example for this. So when you're maybe using your own stuff, we're going to learn in some future videos a little bit of extra tricks to get some more tougher selections. But if it's a product shot or something like this, it's a really nice studio shot. It's going to be easy to select. So these bits here are not quite right. So I'm going to zoom in. So Command plus on my Mac, Control plus on a PC, spacebar, holding down my spacebar and dragging with my mouse. Okay, you can see it's missed these bits and there's a little bit of stuff in there. Yeah, quick selection is quick. Okay, it's not going to be absolutely perfect, but it's pretty close. So what I want to do is minus from my selection. Okay, but my brush is quite big, so it doesn't fit in there. So I'm going to lower the brush size to something quite small. Teeny tiny. And I'm going to click in here, say get rid of that. And you'll notice that when I start dragging, it goes and it looks horrible. And when I let go of my mouse, look, oh, magic. If it's, what you can do, there's this auto enhance option on. The only trouble with it, it does a better selection, which is cool, but it does stress your machine out. So get in there, and I've got a really pretty high powered laptop and it does stress it out. Don't worry about getting too far into these edges in this example. Okay, we're going to do some more sophisticated selections later on. So I've kind of tidied that up using the minus. If I say I go too far, grab a bit of that, and it's like, oh no, it's gone too far. Go back to plus and just drag across that bit. Auto enhance, you can see, kind of stresses it out a little bit. Cool, so let's zoom out and let's see what we got. Have I missed anything? Click on the quick selection tool, it's pretty good, go off. So now we're gonna move it into this file here. We're gonna use our technique where we just drag it. Okay, and one thing we might notice, let's do it first. Let's click, hold, and drag it. Okay, and drag it into this tab, wait, calm down. You'll notice that my one has not the most beautiful edge. Okay, so I'm gonna edit step backwards until it's gone. Come back here, and I'm just gonna kind of shrink the selection a little bit. We're gonna look at more sophisticated ways of doing this later on, so don't worry. I guess we're just kind of getting used to the tools. Quick selection is an awesome one, but the edges aren't perfect, so we're gonna go to select, modify, and we're gonna go to contract. And how many pixels? You'll have to experiment depending on your image. Okay, but I'm gonna go back maybe 3 pixels, not 30. Click OK. Now with my move tool, click, hold, and drag it, and it's gonna be better. Not perfect, okay, but it's a quick solution for the quick mask. Okay, and now I'm just gonna go and kind of rejig this to show you what it looked like at the beginning. But if you're happy with that, you can move on to the next tutorial. That's the quick selection tool. But a quick caveat with that tool there, I've picked an image that works well with it. It's got nice, clear, defined edges. When we get into things like hair and out of focus objects, quick selection tool is not going to work. Okay, so it's one of your tools in your Photoshop toolkit, and we'll look at more advanced ones later on. But for studio shots and anything that has a clear, sharp edge, it's super quick and easy. So what I want to do is I want to resize it. So I'm going to name my layer flower. My spelling is terrible. I spelled that flowerists when I first start with a U. I had to go back and reshoot this bit. So I'm going to use my selection tool, okay, or my move tool, move it around. I'm going to use my edit, transform, scale, and I'm going to shrink it down holding shift. This is stuff we already know, so if you want to skip along, it's okay. I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to get it down to a size that I like. Hit return on my keyboard, edit, transform, rotate. Okay, click anywhere on the outside here and get this kind of, what I'm looking to do in this case is I want to rotate it around. I want this kind of Dublin to be behind and the florists to be above. So I've got it into where I want, hit return, and we're going to play with a layer order. I love this kind of like real subtle interaction with the background where, watch this, I'm going to bring the flower in between these two guys here. That way the kind of D is partially obscured. You can still understand it's the word Dublin and florists is above. And for no reason other than to balance up the composition, I'm going to right click this, duplicate the flowers layer, and a flower too. How about that? With my move tool, move them over. Now, instead of going to edit, transform, scale, rotate, we're going to use this one here, the free transform tool, which does both. Okay, so from now on, I'm just going to use the free transform tool. The Command T on a Mac or Control T on a PC is a really common shortcut to know. Okay, so if you're going to be learning any shortcuts, that's a good one, because what it does is allows me to hold down shift and resize it. But at the exact same time is if I go move away from here, I go to rotate, I can rotate it around as once. If you're finding that tough, don't sweat it. You can go back in and just do it the long way, but I want to do it the quick way. How balanced is it? It's not super balanced. I need to find another image and crop it out, but I'm not going to. Hit return, and that is going to be me for this tutorial. All right, so that's the quick selection tool. It is really amazing, but there's a few other things that we need to learn in terms of selections and masks before you're a pro. So join me in the next tutorial where we learn what a layer mask is. Hi there, in this video, we're going to learn what a layer mask is. Basically, we're going to take the same tutorial we did in the last video, but do it properly with something called a layer mask. The cool thing about them is you can turn them off later on, disable them, bringing back the background, fixing your masks. And then we'll really double back and look at this option, and you can see we can fade the edges, we can break the link, we can move them around so that we've got more control, more professionalism, more awesome. Let's do that now in Photoshop. So what is this layer mask that I speak of? Okay, it's probably better just to go through and show you an example. You'll see all the perks and pros for using a layer mask. So I'm going to double back and use the exact same files as the last tutorial, so 14A and B, and we're going to get up to the point where we were at. I'm using the quick selection tool, okay, and I'm just drawing around super quick, and I've got my selection, right? And what we did before is then use the move tool to just drag it in, okay? The problem with that is it's something called destructive editing. And what I'm deciding is that, watch this, if I move this out, I've cut that background out forever, and my selection is kind of fused forever, and there's no going back from that. And that's not what I want to do in Photoshop. I want to make a selection, maybe a quick selection like this, and then maybe go and fix it up later on or make adjustments or just have a bit of flexibility. To do that, you make your selection like we did here. Instead of dragging it, you just click this button down here. Okay, it says add a mask. Okay, and it's called a layer mask. And what happens is, ready, give it a click, and the background disappears. Okay, I need to go through and fix my edges. That's fine. There's a few little places that need touching up, but we'll do that in the next video. But what's happened is, can you see this layer structure over here? My image is protected. It's perfectly fine. There's nothing destroyed about it. This mask just sits over the top hiding things. And where that becomes really nice is that later on I can go and fix my mask or do a better edge on this or reuse this image for something else where I don't need it to be masked. Let's go and use it. So I'm going to grab my move tool, click, hold, and drag up to the top here using my technique. You can see we end up in the same place. We've got the same kind of edge here, but you can see over here the mask came along, which is lovely. And now I can do some modifications to the edge here. Okay, whereas before I couldn't. So what I can do is See this down here in my layers? I'll toggle between the two. Can you see those lines that appear on the outside? Because you can work on the image or the mask separately. You can see your properties panel changes depending on what part you've got selected. I've got my layer mask selected, and it gives me options to play around with this mask. And a real basic one is the feather. So watch this, I can crank up the feather and it just kind of feathers the out edges a little bit. Okay, so it wasn't so bitsy and yucky. Okay, it's because it's on a black background, it's gonna kind of let the background of the actual image through. And often this is all you need to do to get a selection looking nice, just give it a little bit of a feather. So let's look what else you can do with it. So I can right click on my mask and say just disable. I'm not turning it off forever. I can just see what was in the background there. It's not much because it was a black image in the background. But if there was other elements that maybe I cropped off that shouldn't have cropped off, I can just double check. Okay, so this is a very similar thing than what we did in the last video where we, kind of cropped it out, but now we can go back. Yay for layer masks. So whenever I'm looking at people's work and I'm seeing if they're kind of self-taught or using it like a professional, I'd be always looking for layer masks to give future self or other people in the business that open your PSD files the ability to go back and adjust your mask, either fix it or maybe just turn it off so they can use the image. I can turn it back on by right-clicking it and going enable layer mask, or I can delete it forever and get rid of it and maybe start again. So hopefully you can see the perks for a layer mask. What we'll do is we'll look at maybe another example that better shows its like amazingness. Okay, so we're going to go back to files we had open before. Remember we did this one here. We did 12A and B. Remember we used the circle. It was these two, remember? We copied and pasted this in. So we're going to do the exact same thing again, but just use our layer mask to give ourselves like some professional, awesome skills. So I'm going to drag out my circle holding shift, get it there. And instead of just going to my move tool and dragging it out, cutting the background out, never to be used again, I'm going to undo. And I'm just going to click this button. So it's not much in terms of what you do, except you can see here, it's probably a better example where I've got this mask. It's this black versus white on top of my image, and the image is perfectly fine. Here's what's called non-destructive. Now we use my technique, grab the move tool, drag it into this one, down here. Okay, now I can go through and start scaling it. So remember, I'm gonna use my shortcuts from now on, Command T. Okay, I'm gonna scroll it down, get it down. And let's look at some of the other perks. I'm gonna hit return. So that's done. But remember the edge we had before, which was it was just really hard edged. Okay, so it didn't look really believable as much as a galaxy in a cup does. But remember the feather? I can just kind of feather the edge here. I'll go maximum feather so you can kind of see the edges there. But you can see I'll move it out so you can see it. It's got a blurry, feathery edge. Okay, and it just helps that to look slightly more believable. It gets better. Layer mask time, you can see at the moment it moves together, the mask and the image, but you can break that link. See this little linking icon here? Click on it. Okay, and now, remember I can click on my mask or my image. And in this case, I want to leave my mask where it is because it's kind of in the right position for the coffee cup. But if I grab my image now, move tool, look at that, how pro are we? Okay, we can get our composition right or make adjustments that the client asked us, or you get the idea, right? So in this class so far, we've been doing destructive editing. Okay, by just copying and pasting it or dragging it. From now on though, you and me are going to use layer masks. Turn the link back on because otherwise it's a bit funny having them separate. And now let's get into the next video where we start tidying up some of the less easy selections to make. We've been doing it easy so far. Let's make it hard, or at least harder. All right, see you in that video where we look at something called select and mask. Hello, in this tutorial, we're going to take some more complicated selections and masks. The most complicated of them all is here. That's a little out of focus in the background here. Okay, and using the power of Photoshop and its amazing select and mask feature, hey, we're gonna mask it out against a sunset background just because, using the underwhelmingly named select and mask feature. It's amazing. Let's go and do it now. All right, so we've got two files open. We've got 14A, which we've used before, and we're going to open up this new one called 15. Okay, so grab both of those open and let's start with 14A. And we're going to build on some of the techniques we've already learned. So we are going to use our quick selection tool. We're going to use a brush size of, it doesn't really matter, okay, in this case, because it's such a clear division of color in the background. So I'm going to click hold and start dragging around. And we did this in the previous tutorial. So I've got most of it there. It's done an okay job. The only thing I need to fix up is just these bits in the middle here. So I'm going to zoom right in. I'm going to pick a smaller brush size. Now it's shortcut time. Okay, we're not going through too many in this course because we are at the beginning kind of level, but there's some really useful shortcuts. Like, so look at your keyboard and you're looking at the P key, okay, and we are using the square brackets that's next to it. Okay, so the open and close square brackets, give them a try. And makes your brush bigger and smaller. Instead of going up the top here and going, okay, now I need a smaller brush size and dragging it up and down. Okay, it's a nice way to get started. So I'm going to do something quite small and I want to minus from the selection. So I can go to minus here, okay, and just kind of remove that bit there. Give it a second, minus that bit there. Okay, I'm going to go even smaller, get this bit in there, this bit in there. I'm not going to spend too long now because that was for a different tutorial. I'm going to tidy that up. I say no, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to zoom out and I've got my selection. And like we did in the previous tutorial, we're going to add a layer mask because that's non-destructive and awesome. And we're going to have something that has an okay edge. Okay, and we looked at doing feather, and feathers doesn't kind of work. What we want to do is maybe tuck it in a little bit. So what we're going to use is this magic thing here called select a mask. If you can't see it, you might be on this thumbnail here. Doesn't appear. So I can click on my mask and then select a mask appears in my properties panel. Okay, so click on select a mask. They should call it like super amazing mega masking fixer thing. Okay, because it's got an insignificant name, select and mask, but it does some really amazing tricks. Okay, so yours might look like more like this. So we need to do a couple of things. The first thing is along the top here, we need to decide on, I think it defaults to onion skinning. We can check it against different backgrounds. Now this will depend on your actual image. Ours is white against black. So if I start masking it against black, okay, it's just put a solid black background in there to kind of show me the edge. It doesn't show me it very well. Whereas white, I zoom in a little bit, you can see it's a really easy contrast against the edges here. So decide what works for you on black, on white. It might be on the layers, that might be one that works for you as well if you've got a layer underneath. So where does the magic happen? Magic happens is there's kind of two ways. If you go to edge detection, okay, and often you can just lift this up and it fixes a lot of things, okay? I'm gonna crank it up a little bit and I'll show you the preview on and off. It can stress your computer out a little bit. Now also note that we're not looking at high quality preview. You can turn this on, it just stresses your machine out even more trying to produce these previews. So if the machine is struggling, you can turn that off. I turn mine on and what we're gonna do is look at the original. Okay, this one here that says show original, click that. So that's what it used to look like. Okay, and that's what it looks like now. So it's kind of softened that edge nicely. The shortcut for it is P, and I use that quite a bit. So just tap P on your keyboard to turn it on and off, on and off. It smoothed it out, but it hasn't perfected it. I find the magic potion often is down in here and under output, and this decontaminate colors. This works really well when there's a huge contrast between the background and the foreground that you're trying to mask out from, and the color kind of leaks around the outside. So if this was against blue, you'd have like a blue kind of halo around the outside, and that's often where the problems with selections are. So you can click on decontaminate colors and magic. Okay, so hit P on, P off. Now that's fixed this particular one really well. What we'll do is we'll open a more complicated example. We'll finish this one off first, but we'll get into a more complicated example. Okay, so there are other options. We'll go into global refinements. Now, this is work for this particular exercise. You might find you've got a very similar flower against the background, but those two tricks didn't work. Don't think radius and decontaminate colors are the only things to do. Start playing around with smooth. Okay, so let's turn decontaminate colors off. And then you can see the smoothness just kind of tries to kind of smooth out any kind of jagged lines that you might have got in your selection. Feather does what we did in the earlier example. Okay, I don't find that super helpful. Contrast shift edge. Shift edge is a handy one. Okay, just gonna watch this. If I go a little bit this way, you can see it's just tucking it in. So instead of decontaminating the colors, it's just kind of shifting the edge of this radius, minusing it a little bit. Okay, so kind of trimming off the edges. Find that is a reasonably useful one too. Okay, so there is a lot of experimentation with this tool, I guess is what I'm trying to get across. Okay, when you're finished, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna output to our layer mask. Okay, you can create a new layer from our selection. I'm just gonna adjust the one I've already got and click OK. But what I should have done before I clicked OK, go back to select a mask, and the decontaminate colors is what did the magic for us. And I'm going to say, let's make a new layer with this new layer mask so I can see my old one versus my new one. So there's the new one. I'll turn that off, turn my old one back on, create an edge, Turn that one off, that one on, nice edge. But let's go and look at a more complicated example, some hair, or this will work the same for, say, some grass or something that's really hard to select. So let's jump over here to the 15. So this one's a lot trickier. Where it's really hard to do selections is here, and out of focus here could be the hardest. So I'm going to show you a reasonably hard thing to do. Is it going to be absolutely perfect using select and mask? No, but it's going to get you most of the way there. It's pretty amazing. So what I've done for you for this particular file is I've got two layers. I've got the model on top of a background. We're going to try and match these two up. Okay, what they have to do with our florist, I'm not sure, but I wanted to do here because everyone's going to ask about it. I know. It always happens in my classes. So with the layer selected, okay, I'm going to go back to my quick selection tool, pick a size. Okay, I'm going to start with 50 just because. And I'm just going to click and drag around to try and get most of it. Cool. So if you're playing along, yours is not going to be, depending on where you selected, okay, it's going to be slightly different result from where I'm at. Okay, but I've got a reasonably, it's a pretty cool selection. Okay, and what I want to do is add a layer mask. Okay, you're like, not very convincing, Dan. All right, so what we need to do now is click on my mask, go select a mask. And up the top here, we've got to decide against what background we want to see it. Now, you can see against white, against black is probably better in this case. Remember before it was white, so against black is nicer here. On layers could be quite useful as well, because sometimes you can get a bit carried away with like getting the most perfect mask when really it just needs to look good against here. So let's start with on black to make it clear for you. Now the radius is just not going to work in this case. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see kind of, because there's two like contrasting areas. There's this kind of out of focus here, but the nice strong crisp edge of the skin here. If I lift up the radius, it's going to try and, it's fixing the skin a bit, but it's kind of not doing a great job over here. So radius is not particularly going to work for me on this case. Now I can play along with global refinements. The problem is it's doing it globally, and I have these two really different kind of things going on. So I want to use some of these brush tools alongside here, and it's this one here that's going to do most of our work. It's called the Refine Edge brush tool. Okay, and basically it's a brush tool to say, Photoshop, have another go. Have another look at this particular area that I'm painting and see if you can fix it for me. Like magic. I'm going to use a bigger brush size. Now, I'm cheating and using square brackets, okay? You can use the slider up here to pick a different brush size, but to make it go bigger and smaller, have a look down your keyboard. It's a shortcut, okay? It's one of the really helpful ones when you're doing lots of masking. Next to your P key, just to the right of it, are square brackets. The opening and the closing, just tap them and see that it'll make your brush bigger and smaller. I find this is a real easy way to work. So what I'm going to do is make a nice big brush and say, Photoshop, please have a look at paint. I'm going to paint across this and have another look at this stuff. Give it a second to catch up. Okay, and it's gone through and tried to remask this part, not touching this. I might do this one. I'm going to grab a smaller brush and say, actually, have a look at this as well. I'm just painting along down here. Wow, it's hard to do. It's a very steady hand. You might zoom in and just do a nicer job. Okay, so it's kind of fixed. So you can kind of see I can work on different areas and kind of start using some of these edge detection features, but not globally, just particular parts. So I'm just going to work around and say, that was a bad go, have another go. This wasn't great. This wasn't great. This wasn't great. Moving around, give that another go. This bit another go. Now remember we're doing against black, and it's not it's very unforgiving. So it's a good way to get started, but don't get disheartened if you're like, man, this is never going to look good. It's not perfect around the outsides yet. I'm going to keep working around. Have another go at that, please. That guy, that guy, that guy. All right, I'm going super fast. I should be changing my brush size a little bit more, but let's just have a little look against our background. So let's look at against the layers. So this is kind of a more important kind of thing to look across. You can see some of the hairs coming through, which is cool. It's not as blobby, but there's a little bit of blue. Now, do you remember from the last thing we did where if there's color kind of leaking around the sides? I love this one here under output, called decontaminate colors. And it kind of just tries to get rid of that stuff around the outside. And we're looking pretty magic now, right? I'm impressing myself, which I shouldn't because I've done this before, but I'm impressed with Photoshop. It's really cool, especially this selector mask. And you can see now I can just zoom in and just work on the parts that I find aren't quite working. So you have to change your brush size. It's going to go through and have another little look. Let's zoom out. Okay, see how convincing it is. I'm gonna probably have to go through and have a little look at doing a little bit more with the brush for these kind of bits that are still a little bit blue. But you can see if you've tried to do this in Photoshop before and like it's used to be impossible, okay? So selector mask has really kind of lifted that game for us. For things like here that are out of focus or trees and leaves that are kind of moving. So there is just times where it's just really hard. If you've got somebody with sandy blonde hair moving out of focus against the hay bale, selector mask is not going to be your super awesome selection trick. You need some sort of contrast. So if you're in charge of the photo shoot, make sure that there's some sort of contrast against your model or the product that you're shooting so that you can use tools like this later on in post. All right, I hope you have fun with it. I love it when it came out. Selector mask, you are awesome. Thank you, Photoshop. Let's get into the next tutorial where we start looking at smart objects. Hi there, in this video, we're going to look at what a smart object is. A lot of people ask me, why should I be using them? They're on lots of forums. People say, always use smart objects. Okay, we're gonna dive in, figure out the pros and cons for them right now in Photoshop. All right, so we're going to look at the two parts. We're going to look at smart objects for images, and then we'll look at it for things like logos and icons. They traditionally call vector objects. So to get started, make sure you've got 16A open, okay? 16A smart objects from the source files. Now let's bring in an image. Now we're going to do it our way, file, open. Okay, and let's open up the one called 16B, okay? Another image from Norwood Themes. Great, so we're going to use our trick, move tool, click, hold, drag, drag, drag. We've done this before. We're getting pretty good at it, right? Okay, and we've got our image here. It's really big, okay, lots of quality in there, awesome. And I want to scale it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the wrong way, well, the way we've been doing it, and then the new fancy way. So I'm going to grab my edit, transform, and scale. Remember, I'm going to use my shortcut, Command T. I'll zoom out a little bit. Okay, I'm going to scale it down to something a lot more appropriate. And let's say I get it down to this size. For what reason? Mainly just to show you an example. Let's say I want to use it quite small. I'm going to remove the background. It's going to be this like little petite thing in here. Okay. I click return, done. And then later on, I'm like, actually what I might do is make it bigger. So I'm going to use my shortcut again, Command T on a Mac, Control T on a PC, and I'm going to make it nice and big. What you'll notice is, can you see the quality of this guy here? I want it nice and big in here. Okay. Hit return, the quality just disappeared, okay? And that's where the value of a smart object comes in, okay? If you make it really small, Photoshop goes, okay, I'm gonna get rid of all the pixels I don't need, and when you make it bigger, they're just not there anymore, unless we use a smart object. So with this layer selected, I'm gonna delete them, okay? And we're gonna bring in the proper way. So same technique, drag it across to this tab here, and before you do anything, right-click the layer where it says Layer 1, okay? And we're gonna convert to Smart Object. And nothing looks like it changes. Okay, the only thing that changes really is the icon here on the thumbnail that wasn't there before. We turn it off, turn it back on. Cool, so that is, yeah, basically all you need to do. You don't need to remember to do much, okay? But what happens now if I go to my transform and I scale it down smaller, okay, petite, I'm not sure why I use that word. Okay, oh, bad transform. Hold down Shift, Dan. Okay, hit return. It's really teeny tiny. Zoom in. Okay, but when I make it bigger, let's go. You can see all the quality is still there. Okay, so that's the kind of thing for smart objects. What it is think of it like a wrapper that goes around the outside. It's like a little cocoon. If I hit return now, it's a little cocoon that I put the image inside. Okay, that protects it. So even though I make it smaller, it's in this kind of like protective shell. Inside that shell is still a full quality image. Now your file size will be bigger, okay, because we've got the big version in there, but it means that it gives me lots of flexibility later on to do resizing, and it protects it from what's called destructive editing, things that'll wreck the image, okay? You can kind of do stuff to it, but inside is still the good version. What I'm going to do now is do this. I'm going to play with my layer order. Now, just so you know the structure of this, I made a rectangle using the rectangle tool. Where is he? There. Okay, and then I added our gradient overlay. We did this earlier in the course, right? I've got some text there as well. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at, so images are used that way. That's the best way to use them. Let's look at, say, icons and logos. So let's bring it in, and you can bring in logos two different ways. I'll show you two different ways because, yeah, there's just some people, if you've already got Illustrator skills, what you're probably going to be doing is working in Illustrator. So I'm in Adobe Illustrator. You don't have to do this. You can just watch if you don't have Illustrator installed. I'm going to file open to my exercise files, and I'm going to open up this one here, 16C. Okay, it's my vector logo. And the cool thing about this, so Illustrator is really handy for drawing things like logos and icons, okay, better than Photoshop. But let's say it's been drawn in this program. What I can do is grab my black arrow, select it all, go to copy, okay, edit copy, jump back into Photoshop, okay, and then go edit paste. And here it defaults to pixels, and pixels is not the good way. We love smart objects, okay? Let's do the before and after. So I'm gonna bring in pixels and hit return, okay, to get it the right size. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna paste it again. So I've got two options. One is smart objects. Let's turn off add to my current library for the moment. It doesn't really matter. Let's click OK. I'm gonna hit return, get it the right size. So now I have two using both methods, okay? And the difference is going to be that same scaling thing there. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it. And they're both the same kind of quality at the moment. So this is my second one. That's the first one. Let's name them. Let's go no smart, not smart. And this one here is very smart. I'm going to select both of them at the same time. Click the first one, hold shift, click the second one. I'm going to use my shortcut for scaling. Remember, Command T on a Mac, Control T on a PC, and get ready for it. Let's zoom out. Okay, and let's make this thing very big. And I'm going to hit return. You'll notice that the one on the left here, okay, let's have a little look. One on the left here is horrible. You've all seen that, okay? It's all pixelated and there's interpolation everywhere. See, this guy, Smart Object Man, is like how crispy is, or she. It's probably a she. Okay, so that is the big difference. Okay, when you're bringing in logos or icons you've got from, say, your Envato Elements account, and it does give you the option. It says, would you like it to be a smart object? Yes. Smart object is the way to go. Why would you not use a smart object? There is a handful of, say, filters up here that just won't work if there is, like lens blur won't work if it's a smart object. Every new version of Photoshop, they seem to be able to include more and more of these features. So smart blur doesn't work on that, but let's look at the not smart object. Okay, and let's go to filter, blur, and lens blur is available. So that's one of the drawbacks. Okay, the other drawback, it makes the file size big. Let's say you did want to use lens blur. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of my not very smart layer. Goodbye. Let's say I'd like this though, and I'd like to kind of make it nice and big, but I want to add a lens blur to it. So it's not going to work until I convert it back into a not smart object. Okay, and what that's really called is if you right click the word very smart, there's one that says rasterize layer. Nothing's going to change, except now when I scale it up, it's not going to have my crisp quality. It'll scale down just fine, but any bigger, it's not going to be able to redraw. So I don't want to do filters, just kind of an example, I guess. I'm going to go to edit, step backwards until my little icon appears. I'm going to show you one of the other perks for using a smart object, especially with things like logos and icons. So I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to shrink it down because it's meant to be kind of over here. My arrow keys just to tap it around on my keyboard. Let's make it white with this layer selected. We're going to use the effects and we'll use color overlay. And mine's already defaulted to white, which is cool. Click OK. So I've got that version, right? Now I want to use it in a kind of like a hero graphic way. So that big kind of thing you saw at the beginning, kind of covering the background. So I'm going to right click him. I'm going to duplicate him. I'm going to give him a name. Let's call him hero graphic. So I've got two of them now, kind of on top of each other. I'm going to scale this one up. And because it's a smart object, it's got all the lovely vector. Hit return when you're finished. I'm going to lower the opacity to kind of make it a more of a watermark thing in there. Oh, yeah, it looks okay-ish. So where the perk is, I've got two versions of this now. And let's say that I'm still developing this logo or icon and I want to change it. There's a really cool, neat little trick you can do with smart objects. I can double click, let's say the very smart option, double click the thumbnail or this little icon, double click it. Now it's going to open up in the program that created it. Okay, so in this case, it's going to be Illustrator. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. And what it does is, you see that original guy I copied across? Okay, it's the second version, like they're not connected. That original one I made and copied in doesn't have any sort of connection. So I'm just going to close them down. But this guy here that says Vector Smart Object, there's a total connection back to my Photoshop. What I can do is let's zoom in. Okay, I'm just going to do a real basic, use my white arrow and I click on this thing here and I'm just going to drag the point, move the handles. I don't know what I'm doing. Reckon it. Okay, so I'm just adjusting this. Okay, clients ask for changes or I just don't like it. When I hit save, so I'm going to go to File, Save, jump back into Photoshop. You ready? Can you see? It got that little tab there. Okay, that's a little thing we made. Okay, there he is there. And there's the big tab there. So they're connected together. Okay, so it makes for like lots of changes, especially if you're doing say you've got lots of you use the logo a few different times, okay? It's all connected. Even if you're just using it once, it's nice to be able to go inside, make a change and see it update across different artwork. I am totally wrecking this thing now, just because. Nope. That is wrecked. Save it, jump back in here. You can see I've wrecked my logo. Jump back in here, undo it. Save it back into here and it updates. So to recap, basically bring in an image, whatever size it is, convert it to a smart object, do your work. If you have to convert it into a non-smart object, okay, it's right clicking it and rasterizing it. There are some extra perks for vector objects, okay, copying and pasting from, it works the same for InDesign or Illustrator, copying and pasting logos in. The other thing I'll quickly show you is instead of copying and pasting from Illustrator, you can use this file. And this one here, it says place embedded. If I click on this, I can do the same thing without having to open up Illustrator. You might not be that keen on that. You might not have any skills in Illustrator. So you can go straight to here, bring in your vector file, place, everything's perfect, click OK, and hit enter on your keyboard to get it the right size. And cool thing about that is that Photoshop's clever enough to say, I'm just going to make him a smart object. So you don't really need to, I guess, make that decision at the beginning. But you still have all the same perks of being able to double click it, go into it, and make adjustments and go back in again and have it update in Photoshop again. All right, smart objects, kind of confusing, easy with images. You're going to be in lots of images. So 100% smart objects all the time. All right, I think I just need to finish this video now and we'll get on to the next one where we look at some of the transform and warp tools. Pretty exciting, cool, fun Photoshop stuff. Let's jump into there now and get started. Hey there, in this video, we're going to take this kind of flat graphic at the top right here and wrap it around our coffee cup and stick it under the book and kind of make it so it interacts with the background. You can kind of see it there, all using the magical transform tools in Photoshop. Let's get into it. All right, so first up, I've got 17A transform. Okay, it's from Raw Pixel on Unsplash. And let's bring in our logo that we're going to try and morph around here. So let's go to File and let's go to Place Embedded. And we're going to start with this one here called 17B. We're going to use transform logo, 17B. Click on place. Yep, everything's perfect. Click OK. And then we're going to get it to the size we want. I'm happy how it comes in. I'm just going to hit return on my keyboard or enter. And remember from the last video when we talked about smart objects and we're like, Photoshop is awesome and it converts it to a smart object automatically. The very next video, that's going to cause us problems. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to learn some of these edit transform tools. You can do the basics while it's a smart object like scale and rotate, which we've covered already, and we'll cover skew. I never use skew. Okay, you might need skew. Okay, I'm gonna hit escape to say, no, I didn't mean that. So, not a smart object, it's not gonna work for us in this case. So we just right click the name and we go to this one that says rasterize layer. Okay, nothing changes except the icons go, and we get to do this. We get to go to edit, transform, and we're going to start with distort. Okay, and it's just going to allow us to, it looks kind of similar as scale, but when you grab one of the corners, you'll notice it's a little bit squidgy. Okay, so what I'm going to try and do is I can click anywhere in the middle to move it. Don't use the little crosshairs in the middle, just anywhere else. And then I'm just going to kind of try and lay this thing down on the ground. There's just a lot of like tongue out going, does that look right? Does that look right? There's a lot of that. Okay, when you're doing this technique. Okay, I'm just trying to make it look like it's on the floor. Could be painful to watch. And yeah, I fiddle around there with edges to make it feel like it's on the ground. You give that a go. Okay, when you're finished though, remember it'll be all grayed out until you hit return on your keyboard or enter on your keyboard to say, yep, that's what I meant. Cool, so that is the distort transformation. There's a few other ones we'll just quickly discuss rather than go through. Under edit, transform, there is the option of flipping vertical and horizontal, just kind of flips it over. Okay, let's look at one of the other ones. Let's bring in another graphic. Let's go to File, let's go to Place Embedded. You could be copying and pasting from Photoshop, avoiding the smart object and using pixels in that case. Let's go down to 17C, just a square version that I made. Click OK. If you do get stuck in this kind of middle land, okay, it just means that, again, nothing's going to work. It's kind of saying, I'm bringing it in, but what size would you like it to be? And I'm just going to say, enter on my keyboard, bring it in that size, please. Same problem as before. We're going to have to right-click them and go to Rasterize Layer. With my Move tool, I'm just going to move it into the middle here, and now I'm going to try and, I want to kind of make it wrap around this coffee cup. Now there is a setting in here that I'll just quickly show you, perspective. I never use perspective. Why? Because I just find I use warp. It does this, which is kind of cool. You might like this. This might work for you, but you can't kind of rotate it. And I find to do that effect that we did earlier, distort is a lot more flexible. Okay, you might like perspective, have a play with it. I don't find it very useful at all. I'm gonna hit escape. The one I do find super useful is under edit, transform, there's this one called warp. So I use that one and that one quite a bit when I'm trying to fake things. Okay, so distort was great for laying this guy down on the ground, and warp, it works very similar, except it's more like fabric now. So I'm gonna zoom in, move across. And if I grab one of the corners here and just drag it around, can you see it's more like fabric, whereas this was kind of like, you know, we were playing with the perspective and it was quite solid, whereas this, everything's kind of bendy. So the cool thing about this, there's pros and cons. And there are some default shapes up the top here. You can pick arc, okay, and you can pick lower arc, and there's some adjustments over here. And you might get lucky and like, you might just get the perfect one. So say this one here, the band, say it's a wine bottle and there's no, like at the moment, there's a bit of a perspective here. It's not straight on. So you might decide that actually you can go negative. So say -50, maybe -20. Okay, and you can kind of get it, but there's this other kind of, I want it to be flaring out a little bit. So these custom ones, okay, are not going to be that useful, except for fish. Remember fish? Can we do this with type? You always need fish. There's never not occasion for fish. And if you want to get back to custom, it's this top one here. Okay, actually, I don't want to start with fish, so I'm going to hit escape on my keyboard to get back to how it was and just start again. Edit, transform, and let's go to warp. Okay, and what I'm going to do is, again, just kind of a lot of playing around going, oh yeah, how does this? There's a lot of dragging over. So, and what happens is there's kind of four main corners. So these kind of four corners, okay? And then there's these things, these handles that affect how it gets into these corners. So you need to play around with a bit of both. Okay, so you can just watch me. There's a lot of just trial and error and practice in this case, okay? Out a bit further. And what I'm looking at is I'm just trying to mock up, trying to follow the edges here and follow the cup top and bottom. So I need this to bulge out a little bit. I need this to kind of come out a little bit here. So we're doing quite a rigid object. I use this technique for, say it's I'm mocking up an image on a billboard. So I've got a photo of a billboard and I've got my kind of like design that I've made for the billboard. It's a good way of kind of just, you know, trying to stick it on there and fake it. I use this quite a bit when we do branding deals where we're trying to get sponsors' logos onto shirts and stuff. We want to mock it up, okay? And another use, you might not be using this much, but I got a few tattoos, and what I do is when I'm designing them, I like to mock them up on my body in Photoshop where they would be colors, like look, just to kind of, yeah, bend them around, because you can get quite, you can see you can kind of follow the curves of the body with enough kind of prodding. I'm going to go, I've gone and wrecked mine now. Don't prod it too much. Okay, so you can like form this around the human body as well, which is quite cool. So I'm gonna try and get mine back to roughly where it was. You're getting the idea now that I've wrecked mine. It looked better before. Okay, so I'm gonna jump out now and pause the video and actually make it look half decent like I had it before, and I'll be back. All right, and I'm back, and I spent a bit of time just kind of flaring it out, matching that. How long did it take? Oh, I don't know. I was at it for about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, trying to get the bulges right. There's no miracle potion for that. But the last thing we'll do before we go is the distorting and the warping is awesome. You need both of them in your toolkit, but I want to get this to interact with the background a little better because it's the same color across and it looks a little fake. So we're going to make it a little less fake by, let's find the right layer. It's this layer here. I turn the eye on and off to work out which layer I'm on. And at the top here, we're going to change the blending mode. We're not going to cover blending modes hardcore now. We're just going to look at switching it from normal to this magical one called multiply. And you can see it just interacts with the background a whole lot better. It's the way that this layer interacts with the things underneath. It's the same with this layer here. If I click on my transform logo and I go into normal and multiply, you can see it just blends with the background. It changes the color a bit, but actually makes it feel a lot more realistic. The cool thing about it is if I click on this, I can move it around. Because it's interacting with the background, you can see it kind of starts looking pretty cool, huh? All right, so that's going to be it for our transforming. Let's jump into the next video where we start looking at photo retouching. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Welcome back everyone. In this video, we're going to look at my favorite tool in Photoshop. It's called the spot healing brush and it's used a lot for retouching. We're going to do a couple of cool things like this. We'll remove some graffiti off the wall. Magic, huh? We're going to remove some blemishes of this man. See his face before, after. We're even going to go as far as removing people completely. Look, what do you mean? There he is. Look, there was a person there and now it's gone. Cool, huh? Let's go learn how to use this fancy tool in Photoshop right now. All right, so let's open up our exercise files, file open, and there's going to be 3 that we're working with, 18A, B, and C. So we'll start with this one here. Now we're going to retouch out some of his blemishes and things. Now I worked as a retoucher for a long time and I don't really like what we do. I love the technology though, so let's look at the technology, not so much the faking life stuff. So what we're going to do, we're going to use this thing called the healing brush. Okay, so the spot healing brush is the top option. So click and hold down, we want this one here. Okay, and in terms of brush size, it will depend on your image. In this particular one, I'm using about 50. Okay, so you can drop this down. I use my brackets there, remember from earlier? Okay, so brackets are really good for changing brush sizes. Doesn't matter if it's the healing brush or just the regular brush tool. So I've got my size at 50 and crank your hardness down to 0. So just drag it down to 0. Just gives a nice even edge. So when you're using it, there's a good way and a bad way. The bad way is just working straight on it. And I want to show you that first because it is pretty magic. Watch this. If I just click, hold my mouse, kind of paint it out. I'm just dragging left and right, let go. Magic, huh? I'm going to go to edit, undo, 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 undo. It just magics away things. I can't believe how cool and amazing it is. Well done, Photoshop. But now you know when people say that person's being photoshopped, man, it's hard to tell. If you're a good retoucher, it's hard to tell. So one of the problems with that is that's called destructive editing. Like I can't go back now. And what ends up happening is, I'm going to paint out another one. And paint out. You can just click once on some of these. Okay, depending on how big, you might have to adjust your brush size, but eventually you'll end up with this person that looks like they're quite fake. They look like they're photoshopped, kind of a plastic, weird skin. So what you do is there's an option under here called File Revert. That just gets it back to when I first opened the document, or at least last saved. Okay, so I'll go all the way to the beginning. So the more pro way of using that tool is to create a new layer down here. It's a blank layer, nothing on it. I'm going to call it my retouch layer. And all I need to do is the same tool, but I need to do this one here that says sample all layers. So instead of it's just going to look through to this layer underneath. Okay. And make sure if yours is not, it's set to content aware. It should be by default. It should be set to normal. Just copy what I've got. So now when I do it, same thing happens. Watch, I can kind of paint over these things, paint over, and you can work your way around. Okay. Brush sizes, remember, is square brackets next to your P key, open and close. Okay, you can go through and you can start working it, but after a while, it starts looking a bit fake. Okay. I'm just so good that it's not looking fake. Okay, let's have a look now. Now, that person is, yeah, let's just talk about, let's say it is looking, you know, starting to look a little fake or plasticky. Okay, what you can do is this layer, it's on its own layer, which is the perfect bit. It's what they call non-destructive, okay, because the background is fine. So what I can do is turn it on and off, on and off. It's really good for just seeing your work, okay? Okay, so your handiwork. And the other thing you can do is if it is starting to look a bit fake because you've just been at it for a long time, often with this retouch layer selected, just drag the opacity down a little bit. And what that does is it lets some of the background, it just makes this a little see-through. So you can start to see, watch it when I drag it right down, right up, right down, right up. You can just kind of find your balance of real life, kind of like maybe muting the marks and blemishes rather than turning them off. Because the problem with a lot of I had a friend in, does casting for models, and the problem is their headshots, she'll get people in and they're like, hey, you don't look like that person at all, really, you know, because of all the retouching. So sometimes, you know, it needs to be a kind of a balance, I guess, softening some of the features or the wrinkles or the acne. Whatever it is, that's the technique. Make sure it's on its own layer, make sure sample or layers is in there. So let's get away from retouching people and let's look at one of the cool practical uses of, say, something like this. Now we've got our brick wall here and it's got, somebody needs more love, okay? And we want to remove it. Let's say it's just, yeah, it's bad graffiti. That's good graffiti. We all need more love. So same technique here. We're going to make a new layer. We're going to use our spot healing brush and now we're going to find an appropriate brush size. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, okay? And my 50 from last time is probably going to work. Now, when you're doing this, you just need to hold your mouse key down and paint. I'm holding down the mouse key the whole time and just give it a good work. Okay. And I'm going to let go and it partially worked. Okay. So I'm going to paint him out as well. And we're getting there. Now, this wall is going to be pretty forgiving because of the brickwork. It's not it's so damaged. If this was a really even brick wall, this technique is going to be average at best. It's really good with nature. Okay, so some of the things down here, say you want to remove this glass bottle, whatever it is, okay, it's really good. It's really hard to tell where it was. Okay, if you do find it's not working for you, you can go to edit, undo, and just try again. Often just the act of trying again will give you a different result. Okay, so you can keep working your way around. Okay, when you're practicing, keep working your way around. You get the sense of kind of how it works. You can see I lost that bit, but it depends, I guess. It's pretty amazing though, right? If you had to go ahead, if you're an old school Photoshopper and you'll be like clone tool stamp, forget the clone tool stamp. Wow, that was a good remove. Okay, so you can kind of work these out. Let's look at this last option here. And it's really, really good for this kind of natural textures. Okay, so I'm zooming a little bit. My brush size, I'm gonna make a bit bigger. You can see I can click on this. Actually, bad Dan. New layer, make sure it's sample all layers. I'm going to just paint some of this stuff out. You can see pretty magic, huh? I can't believe how good this tool is. And it works amazingly because of this rough texture. If it was perfectly some sort of checkerboard, it wouldn't work because there's too many repeating patterns. Now, where it doesn't work, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I grabbed this example, assuming that I couldn't mask out this person. I'm like, no way, it'll do badly. But then I went and made a big paintbrush and I painted her out. And then Photoshop did some magic. I have to wait a little while because it's doing its best, but then she just disappeared. And I was like, not a good example. But there will be times where it just doesn't work. You'll try and do it and it will try its best, but it'll look like there's some sort of weird distortion going on in the world. So, and know that it does work really well. It's a great kind of starting point, at least. If it doesn't work perfectly, you can try and touch it up other ways. But I teach this all the time and I'm so impressed. These are new examples and I'm just like, man, how good is that tool? All right, so that's going to be it. Remember, it's on its own layer, so we can non-destructive, we can go back later on. But yeah, that is going to be the end for the spot healing brush in this exercise. We're going to look at the next tutorial where actually it's even more amazing. It's called Content Aware. So we'll do that next in the next video. Hi there, in this video, we're going to look at something called Content Aware Fill. It is my second most favorite tool or feature in all of Photoshop. It allows to do fun things where I've got this extra space over here. This is the original image. I just need to magic up some background and pray presto. Let's look at another couple examples where this one here, actually the original is the smaller version, but the background got invented using Content Aware Scale. A couple more examples. That's the original. I tighten them all together in about 2 seconds using the same tool. Let's look at this last one here. I've got a really terrible format, okay? It's a banner ad or a big letterbox image, okay? And I need all this background in. Magic. The table got bigger, background got bigger. Let's learn how to do this now in Adobe Photoshop. All right, to get started, let's open up all of the 19 series that are in the source files. So there's 19A, B, C, and D. We're going to start with this one here called from Matt Quinn. Okay, this lovely macro photograph of a bee or a wasp, one of them. And the original photograph ends here, but we need it to be longer for, let's say it's when you end up loading up photographs on a double page spread, so like across the middle of a magazine, across 2 pages, there's always this like gap on the edge here because the formats don't match up in terms of sizes. So we just need to make it a bit bigger. Now we could try using the healing brush and clone tool stamp, and there's lots of options, but there's this magical tool. Remember, my second favorite tool in this whole program. So first thing we need to do is just make sure on the right layer, should be already layer 0, bad naming Dan. Then go to our magic tool under edit and go to content aware scale. Okay, if I just use the regular scale transform that we have, I'm going to scale it out, and obviously it's not going to be particularly exciting, but if I use this one, get ready, edit, content aware scale, and start dragging it slowly this way, watch what happens. Magic, huh? The background gets bigger, but the bee/wasp and flower stay exactly the same. When you've got it to where you want, hit enter and dance around, because that is a super cool, useful tool to use. Okay, so let's say we're going to use this one here. Okay, now it's not going to work in every instance. If you're like, oh goodness, that is it. It's the only tool I need. Okay, it works. I've picked some images that work particularly well. It works really good when there's an object and some generic background. If this was cropped in really kind of like this, really small like this, it's not going to work very well. Okay, so it doesn't work on all. Give it a test. And we'll look at a few examples now and see how to work it. So this one here, what we need to do for it to work is I need to go to edit and look, content aware scale doesn't work on this image here. So we're in 19B, we're looking at Catherine Hanlon's. So for this to work, we've run into this problem a couple of times. Remember the background, it's got a lock on it. So double click the word background, give it a name. This is Helen's. And what we're going to do is I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, and I need to extend, because I want to make it, say, a Facebook profile, you know, the top of Facebook where you've got the big, it's called like a letterbox kind of format where it's kind of wide. So I'm going to use my crop tool. Originally in this one here, I did that for you. Okay, remember we had it this size. Okay, so we'll do it together this time. So using the crop tool, you can see here, earlier we crop things down, but you can actually crop things out. Okay, so I'm cropping it out so that I've got this extra room here. I'm not going to go too hardcore. Hit return when you've got the crop right. With that same layer selected, edit, content aware scale, and then start dragging. You'll see our flowers somehow stay magically in their position, and the wall gets bigger. Just super cool. Okay, let's hit enter to confirm it. Now you might run into a problem here where crop tool, I'm going to click once, drag it up. So you want to make it bigger because you want to you need some room for text at the top here. The trouble with this one is that it's not going to work particularly well. So it doesn't work in all cases. So watch this. If I start dragging it up, the wall gets bigger, but eventually, can you see the pot's getting bigger? Okay, so there are times where it just doesn't quite work, but I don't know, it's still pretty cool. Who knew what that vase looked like to start with? All right, let's look at some other instances. Let's look at 19C. So we've kind of expanded things out, and that's cool, but you can also, so back to my move tool, make sure, double click this layer. This one here is Annie Spratt. We've got a couple from here, this one and the next one. Okay, and let's say that this placement's here. Well, I guess I want to show you an example where you can go edit, content aware scale. Instead of going out, which is super cool, watch this, you can go in. Can you see those bottom guys start moving in? Just magically, and the shadows start distorting. And watch this, I can tighten all these guys together to make a nice kind of a smaller group. Eventually, it's going to start doing weird stuff. Okay, but you know, for slight adjustments like this, man, instead of trying to mask them all out and move them together, this is such a big kind of time saver. Can I shrink them down and spread them out? I can kind of reform this whole kind of composition here really quite easily. Hit return when you're finished. I'm going to grab my move tool. My computer's going to stress out. Okay, move tool. There we go. We've got this kind of like a little bit of distortion there, but you get the idea, right? Now let's look at this last one and get a little bit more hardcore, because there are going to be times where everything looks perfect except for this one little thing. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to zoom out, use my crop tool, Okay, because I want to do that letterbox again. I want it to be quite big-ish. I use this heaps when I do a lot of HTML banner ads, which are just really weird shapes. You know, that kind of really long, thin leaderboard or banner ad, or that skyscraper that's just really bad format. Okay, so reshaping images this way is perfect. So I've used the crop tool, make sure my name is not background, and I'm going to go to Edit, Transform. I'm going to go to Edit, Content Aware Scale. There's going to be a bit of a problem, look. You can see them there's the paper. So everything else is pretty amazing, right? The desk just got bigger, the leaves stay fine, the scissors are great, but it couldn't work out this thing, got a little lost in there. So I'm gonna hit Escape, say, I didn't mean that. And what we can do is we can protect bits of areas. So if you scale it out and it's not quite working, what you do is you grab any selection tool you like. Might be we've used the rectangle and elliptical marquee tool. We're gonna use our favorite, the quick selection tool. And I'm just going to kind of draw a box in there, and it's super quick and easy. Just kind of runs out and grabs the edges of this, which is perfect. And I'm going to go to Select, Save Selection. Okay, so we need to do this step first. So we make any selection we like. We figure out the bad bits, go to Select, Save Selection, and give the selection a name. I never do. You should. Okay, I'm going to go to Select, Deselect. So I'm done with that now. You just make your selections. It could be multiple selections. In my case, it's just a little one. Now, when I go to Edit, Content Aware Scale, okay, and there's an option up here that says Protect. Drop that down, and it says a name. That's the thing I wrote, okay? And now, hopefully, it's going to protect that little selection. Hit Return. Oh my goodness, that is pretty amazing. I love it so much. Now we're doing pretty big examples here. We're dragging it quite far out to kind of show off a little bit, but you might be doing just smaller adjustments just to kind of make it a bit bigger or to fit your dimensions. Okay. Drag it out, see if anything goes wrong. If something does go wrong, see if you can make a selection first, save that selection, then start dragging and use that protect feature. Now, another caveat for this one is that it's going to work on like 40% of your images perfectly. Okay, using the techniques we've learned here. There are some that just don't work. Really kind of confusing backgrounds where maybe it's a crop in really tight of an object or a person. It doesn't work very well. So there are times where it just doesn't work and it's never going to work. But there are times where it's just a lifesaver, and half a day's worth of Photoshop work can be fixed with Content Aware Scale. All right, let's get on to one of the last videos where we look at exporting for all the different kinds of formats: web, social, print. All right, I'll see you over there. Hey everyone, this video is all about exporting our files out of Photoshop. So we've done our work, we're finished, and now we need to do something with them. We'll cover how to send them to different Adobe applications, as well as sending them out to print and web and social media. So let's get started. So first up, open up our file. It's called 20exporting.psd. Now, this is something we've worked on earlier, so you can have your version open if you like. So the first use case is, let's say I've designed this and I want to put it into something like InDesign, Adobe InDesign. And that's a desktop publishing app. So where I make my magazines and books and flyers and brochures. Now this technique is true for all of the Adobe software. It could be After Effects, it could be Premiere, it could be Illustrator. All they really want is, there's actually nothing to do when you export it. You just leave it as this PSD, this working file with all these layers. Exactly the same file you use in Photoshop. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm working on this document here in InDesign. I want to bring in my file. They use place in InDesign. I find in my source files, there's number 20, click open. I drag out my file. I want to kind of cover this thing. Great, move it down. Cool, so that's my kind of banner that I've created, and you can see it just comes through, looks great. It'll print fine from InDesign. Okay, so if you need to incorporate a Photoshop document in any other Adobe product, just bring in the PSD. One of the perks for it though is if I go back into Photoshop, and in here, and I need to make some amends. So let's say this flower here, I just kind of move it around. I decide that needs to be a bit higher, a bit there. The background, okay, I need to change. I'm gonna go to adjustments. There's an invert adjustment, okay, and it's just flip the colors around. All I need to do is file, save, jump back into InDesign. And in here, nothing really happens except here in my links panel, there's a little icon saying modified. Okay, I'm gonna click to update it. You can see I just went and updated. Okay, so it's a really quick and easy way to work within other Adobe products. It's just to use the PSD, and the cool thing is that when you edit the Photoshop document, it flows into other products. Now let's look at another use case where we want to go to print. So let's jump back into Photoshop. So here in Photoshop, I need to send this to a printer, okay? Either my home printer or email it to somebody to get commercially printed. It might be a flyer or a business card. And in this case, because there's text and maybe a logo, we're going to use the PDF format. Okay, so we'll do that one first, and then we'll look at maybe just using a kind of straight up image. So this one here, if I want to send this to the printer file, we use the save as instead of export. Okay, click on save as. There's an option in here. If you click on the word PSD, okay, or Photoshop, find the one that says Photoshop PDF. Okay, I'm going to put mine on my desktop. Okay, desktop even, and give it a name. I'm going to click save, click OK. There's a lot of warning dialogues when we're using this particular save method, because what we want to do is we want to turn this off. With that on, it's basically just a Photoshop file, and the file size is huge. Okay, we don't need that. We're sending it to the printer. We don't need them to have all the Photoshop kind of adjustment layers. We just want it to retain all the image, the transparencies, and any vector that we're working with, like the type. So we've turned that off, and up the top here, just make sure you're on high quality print. Watch, if I go back to high quality print, it turns this back on. So I turn it off, and it's high quality print modified. If you see modified, don't sweat it. All it means is that you turn that off. You click save, and it freaks out and says, hey, normally, I think I've turned my warning off. It says, hey, you sure you want to turn those things off? And you say, yes, I do. Cool. I'm going to close that down now, and let's have a look. No, let's not close it down now. Let's have a look at my desktop. There he is there. There's my PDF. Okay, the cool thing about him is he's a real small file size compared to the original. The original that we opened was about 20 megabytes, and it still retains all the niceness, the good quality. Any type has really crisp edges, so that's a great way of sending stuff to the printer. Let's explore a different exporting use case. This is kind of more simple. Remember we did the retouching earlier, and let's say now I need to send it to somebody to get printed. Okay, it's going to a photo lab to get printed on nice stock. They don't need a PDF. The PDF will work fine. What they'll probably be looking for is a JPEG. And let's look at using a print JPEG. You do it under File, Save As again. And there's lots of options in here for JPEG. What you want is just the standard JPEG, none of these other ones. Click on that. I'm going to stick it on my desktop. I'm going to call this, that's not my desktop. I'm going to call this model. Okay, click Save. And this is where I guess it's quite important. If you're sending this, we've done some retouching. It's a great photograph. We want to keep it as large as we can. Okay, we don't want to kind of drop any quality. Okay, you wouldn't, especially if you want, this is a commercial print. We want to make it look nice, keep the largest file size. Let's click OK. Let's check my desktop now. And now I've got my JPEG. Okay, how big is he? Let's check him. He's 2.7 megabytes. So still really small, but it will print really nicely. The difference between that and say the PSD we had before is there's no layers left in this one. You can see in my Photoshop document, okay, there's actually 2 layers. This JPEG is a flat pancake, but perfect for sending to the printer because they don't need to see your separate layers. They just want a kind of a nice, compact, small, good quality file to print. All right, the next use case is going out to either a website or social media, and the kind of same rules apply to both of them. It's about getting great quality image for the smallest file size because they need to upload, like especially for a website, we don't want to be waiting for your image to load. We want it to go super fast. So let's look at this first option here. And let's say I want to save this out for a banner for Facebook, title, or say it's an Instagram post. What I want to do is go to File, and in a slightly different place, it's under Export. And this one here, Export As is the magic one. Click on Export As. If you're using Save for Web, it works okay. Export As is better, in my opinion. Okay, so in this one here, because there's no transparency, by transparency, remember there's no like checkerboard in the background, there's no kind of like hole in the background. In this case, a JPEG is going to be the best. Okay, and the quality slider, when we exported the print version of a JPEG, we had to use a different way because it retains more detail that's used for printing. Because it's going to a website or to our social media account, Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, we don't need that same level. So we use the Export As feature. And whereas before we had the quality jammed up as high as we can because we weren't worried about file size, in this case, it's basically as low as you can go. Can you go down to 2% quality? The way to know is if you zoom in, can you start to see it's starting to look pretty junky at 2%. The cool thing about it though is over here you can see it's actually 37 kilobytes. Okay, so it's teeny tiny. So best to check it at 100%. Okay, and you can see even 100%, you can see some of the interpolation or some of the pixels all glooping together. So how low should you go? Like my rough rule of thumb is between, so low is 30 and high is 60. Okay, I find somewhere in there is my middle ground normally. There are exceptions. So let's try 30. Click out somewhere. Are you happy with 30? Zoom in a little bit. And this is totally up to you. You're like, what is it for? Type is going to kind of stand it out quite a bit. You're not going to notice too much in here. You can see it still looks pretty good, even when I'm zoomed in. Okay, but things that have like crisp edges will stand out a little bit more. So I might decide, actually, I'm going to go up to 60. You can just drag this up and down by clicking here and just going up and down and deciding what you want. You can see the file size though is a lot bigger at 135 than it is at 30. So the trade-off, if you don't care about file size, go for the higher version. So for websites, file size is really important. For social media, not so much. Just leave it at 100% is fine if you're going to just post it to your Twitter account. All right, once you've got it there, I'm going to click export all, give it a name on my desktop, and leave it as is, .jpg, hit save, and we're done. Now there are occasions where you've spent ages getting a mask. Okay, I've turned off the background, the eyeball here. Remember we did these masks earlier? Okay, and we spent a lot of time doing it because we need transparency. Often you'll only need transparency if it's going out to a website. Not everyone's going to need this, okay, but let's say we need to retain the see-throughness of our image because on the website you can actually see through to the background, which is perfect. So all we need to do is we go to the same feature, File, Export, Save As. We just save it as a PNG. A JPEG, you will see, will fill in the checkerboard transparency with white because a JPEG just can't handle transparency. But a PNG, magically, can. Okay, so it'll leave that, even though it's got a checkerboard, it'll just be see-through. This might be cool if you're going out to, say, a video product and you want to keep the transparency, or in my case, I do a lot of web stuff, so it just needs the transparency. Big trade-off is there's no quality slider, and over here you can see the file size is really big. If it wasn't so big, okay, and didn't have so much stuff going on in it, it would be a lot smaller. But yeah, that's how you get out a file for web that has transparency. Let's click Save All, Save, and that's it. So hopefully that gives you, quickly go over it once more time. Okay, so normally just leave it as a PSD if you want to put it into another program like InDesign or Illustrator or After Effects. But if you need to go to print, okay, typically you just be doing a JPEG, but you have to go to this file, save as JPEG. It's different from the JPEG in here. It has more quality for printing. If, like in this example, there's text involved or logos and vector and all sorts of stuff going on, it's probably better to save it as a PDF, and that's under the save. I like to mix them around, exporting sometimes, save as sometimes. So save as is the PDF. And the last was social media or websites, and it's just hiding under file, export, export as, and a JPEG if you don't have transparency, a PDF if you do. All right, friends, that is going to be the end of the exporting video. I will see you in the next one.
All right, you made it. It's the last video in the series, and we'll just talk about what to do from here. Okay, so first of all, I'd love to see what you've made. Okay, so if you go to the forums here and search for Adobe Photoshop for Beginners, you'll find what other people have done and share what you've done, and I'd like to see it. Okay, or you can share it on social media if you prefer. Okay, for Twitter, we are Tuts Plus Design, or I'm Dan Loves Adobe. Instagram, I'm Bring Your Own Laptop. So share it there. And then I guess working out what you do next is easy. The easy one is an advanced Photoshop tutorial. Okay, so there's a few of those here on Envato Tuts Plus, so search for that. But then you might consider yourself like, I guess a bit more specialty. Okay, so if you're a photographer, the next steps for you might be more going into something called Camera Raw or Adobe's Lightroom. That might be your kind of next step for your learning kind of experience. If you are a web designer or a UI kind of interface designer, you might look to use, there's some courses here for Photoshop specifically for web and UI design. Okay, there's a few features that are specifically for you. You might check that out, or you might move into something like Experience Designer, Adobe XD. Okay, that's a really cool tool for prototyping websites and apps. You might be in the marketing field or communications. Okay, you might find the next best course is
Something else, something like InDesign, which is desktop publishing, or Illustrator, which is more to do with like creating graphics and illustrations and icons and logos, that type of thing. Or another nice thing you might go check out if you're in that space is something called Adobe Spark. It's a really cool way for doing social media posts real super quick. Fix the photos in Photoshop and then add some graphics real quickly in Adobe Spark. So that is going to be us. We are done. We had a great time together. I hope you did. I did. And that's going to be the end of the course. I'm going to finish with an awkward wave. Bye now. I hope to see you in another course.